Okay.
Hello and welcome to the August 7th meeting of the Historic District Commission. I'm going to introduce our commission here, although we're missing Larry Booz, who is our alternate. He usually rolls in at some point. And we've got Dr. Dan Brown.
Good evening.
Martin Ryan.
Good evening.
And Margot Doring is here via Zoom. You there?
In space.
You can say hi, Margot.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, there she is. Just want to make sure that you're connected. I'm Reagan Rudig, the chair. We've got Isaac Gilbo from the Planning Department.
Good evening.
John Wyckoff,
Good evening.
our city councilor, Rich Blaylock,
Good evening.
and David Adams.
Good evening.
All right, so this board's action in these matters has been deemed to be quasi-judicial in nature. If any person believes any member of the board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point or it will be deemed waived. All right, we have a list of administrative approvals to go through, and I will let Isaac lead us through those.
Perfect. Before I get started, just would like to ask the commission members if anyone has any recusals on the administrative approval items. Okay, great. With that being said, 1 second while I share my screen. All right, our first administrative approval item for the evening is 322 Islington Street. The applicant here is seeking approval to replace 2 doors on their property with a mahogany door that would mimic the already approved carriage house door on the property. Here is one of the doors to be replaced, and then this photo shows a further back view, and this would be the second door. So the 2 sort of coral red doors are the doors to be replaced. This is the already approved carriage house door. Here is the Simpson Door Company spec sheet. The actual dimensions are very hard to see on this particular sheet. So we have included a more clear image. However, you will notice that the grid is not exactly as it will be on the doors. It will mimic what is shown on the spec sheet here as a more vertical alignment. And does anyone have questions for? Yes, Dave.
I do. On the spec sheet that was given to us,
Yes.
One in particular we'll just say it says door number 1 dimensions in the lower right-hand side. And it shows little round decorations on the door, which are, I think the company refers to as face pins, which I've only been, carpentering for about 60 years. I don't know what face pins are. But the door that they suggest that they're matching does not have those in it, and they are an option on the manufacturer of the door. I would think that a small little addendum that no face pins.
Sure, we could stipulate that.
That would be terrific. Thank you very much.
Without the addition of the face pins.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. We'll go right to 355 Pleasant Street, which is administrative approval item number 2. The applicant is seeking approval for the installation of a cedar fence and gate. This is to replace a picket-style fence that is currently failed at the property, and then the gate would just go along their small side yard to close that in. So as we can see here, the fence replacement runs all the way down the side of the property, and then the gate would be right here facing Pleasant Street. Here's an example of the cedar arbor and the gate that they are hoping to use for that entrance, which would go again right here, just to the right of the property. And then here's a photo of the existing fence that has been damaged in the last few severe weather events we've had. And again, this is just a example photo of the 6-foot cedar fence that they would like to install along with that gate. And do we have any questions on this particular application? Sandy? Okay, great, perfect. That will bring us to administrative approval item number 3, which is 79 Daniel Street. The applicant for this application is seeking the relocation of existing condenser units on the property. Currently, the existing condensers, which are pictured here, are actually just over the lot line. So the applicant is hoping to actually move those from the side of the property here and place them on the rear upper mid-level of the deck on the back side of the property. They are proposing a screening option for those, which is detailed down here. And does anyone have any questions about the relocation of the condenser units? Or the screening options? Nope. Okay. That will bring us to item number 4, which is 434 Marcy Street. The applicant here is seeking approval for fencing and for handrail designs. So as you can see here, they do have new fence, which would match an existing that's already there. And then we do have a new design, which are flat iron rails at the balcony, and then the flat iron rail here at the landing and steps. And here's just another sort of drawing and a similar rail design to show. And does anyone have further questions on this particular application? Okay. That will bring us down to item number 5, 276 Maplewood Avenue. The applicant for this application is seeking the approval for the installation of fencing and also replacement fencing. So there's a mixture of fencing that they are hoping to have approved. There's an existing chain link fence on the property. They're hoping to replace that existing chain link fence with a new chain link fence as outlined in the site plan, with a vinyl fence that would run across the sort of front of the property. This is the example, or sorry, this is the existing fence to be replaced. And then these are the examples of the vinyl fencing and also the proposed new chain link fencing. Questions? John, yes.
So starting right off, chain link fence is something we really do not see approved. However, since it's there existing and they're replacing it, I'm almost willing, I guess I am willing to accept the replacement of that in kind. However, the vinyl fence along the front portion, I'm calling the front, the Maplewood Avenue side,
Sure.
I cannot accept that.
Any other comments? Dan, yes, please.
I was sort of following in John's footsteps, and I wonder if they thought, because it seems to be only 5 foot, is that right? 5 foot of
5 feet tall.
vinyl fence?
Yes,
Oh,
right.
5 feet height. But
Five-
the
5 feet
50
in height,
wide.
right.
Okay, I get it. Anyway, I was wondering if it wouldn't look better with a black aluminum fence. And the one that the city put in around Goodwin Park is really classy, solid, and I think would go better with the chain link than vinyl. But I don't know. That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Likewise, I walked that section of Maplewood and found no other chain link fencing, and I can't remember the last time that the commissioner or any commissioners voted for one. I have the sensitivity that Mr. Wyckoff does. There is an existing chain link fence, although they aren't asking to keep that. They're asking to change it. They also, in the process of doing that, will more than likely have to cut down all of the stuff that's growing along there. I won't say it's a greenhouse, but it's stuff. I also think that putting vinyl fencing right on the street is a bad move in terms of durability and being a member of the neighborhood. I find it difficult to support this as it's presented.
So I would ask that we take this out and vote on this separately as it is part of the administrative approvals, and there is some negative feelings on this.
Right, we could continue this to next week or next month, and
allow the
Isaac-
applicant
yeah,
to
Isaac
respond to our comments.
can reach out and see if they would be willing to revise their application at all.
I mean, one thing we haven't talked about is that they could replace this plastic fence with a wooden cedar fence, painted white, in the same location.
Yep, I think something other than vinyl.
Something other than vinyl.
Okay, so we'll just pull that one out for
Intent-
voting. Or
Need a
just,
motion?
Would you rather continue to next week, next month, or pull it out and have a?
I don't care. I'm not going to be here next week.
right, okay.
Let's do it then.
We'll just continue it to next week. If they're not ready to bring something
Then-
forward, then it'll go to next month.
Perfect.
Can I
Okay.
have a,
I move that we continue this administrative approval until next week.
there's this one, number 5. Okay. Second, anybody?
Second.
All right. Yes.
Is there anyone here that represents that? Do you know?
Anybody here for 276 Maplewood? We'll have to do a quick roll call because Margot's on Zoom, so.
Approved.
Martin? Margot?
Yes.
Okay. John?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
David?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay. So that will be moved.
Okay. So I will reach out to the applicant there, and we'll see if we can get something prepared for next week's meeting. Otherwise, we will continue from there. Moving on, we will continue with administrative approval item number 6, which is 114 Maplewood Avenue. The applicant here is seeking the approval for the construction of a side exit landing and stair at the property. You can see here, it's sort of a standard design. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it will be constructed of wood with the dimensions that are shown. And this is also being constructed with the same materials and construction methods as the front of the property as the original approval. And do we have further questions on that? I know we do have someone who might be able to speak to that more so than myself, if need be.
Questions at all?
What with the wooden fence, I couldn't see the location at all, so
Right.
we're really, well, there you go.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
no problems? All right,
Okay,
let's go.
fantastic. So that will bring us to our last and final administrative approval item for the evening, which is 238 238 Deer Street. So we have a few changes from an already approved design, and I know that we do have the applicant here. If you just want to maybe quickly run through our changes, that would be greatly appreciated.
Richard Desjardins from McHenry Architecture, representing the applicant. Just a few quick changes. I'm pretty much just going to read the cover sheet for you, and you can ask questions if there's any clarifications that you would like me to make. Due to a water ingress concern at the penthouse level windows, the proposed package raises the previously approved Type F windows to the to provide adequate clearance between the finished decking elevation and the sill of the windows. All fourth floor windows and doors are going to be picture frame trimmed with flat stock to match the profile of board and batten sized battens. The four previously approved condenser units have been relocated from the fourth floor service deck to the main roof adjacent to the elevator overrun to reduce mechanical refrigerant line length. That's needed because they're currently out of the length on the service deck. And just a point of clarification, something that I neglected to add to this is that these 4 condenser units are going to be on 18-inch snow stands, which are the same snow stands that were already approved on the 4 other adjacent condensers that were already approved on this roof. And then we also, just to be upfront, we have located the 2 future condensers for the first floor commercial tenant, and those are going to be behind the elevator overrun. We had a slight change in the type A light fixture, the cut sheets in the last sheet, and we relocated exhaust louvers that were previously on the Deer Street elevation to the public walkway elevation, and we had a slight relocation of a mechanical louver at the rear elevation.
Any questions?
Questions on?
Moving those AC mechanical units to the roof, is that going to get in the way of your plans for your solar collector array?
Unfortunately, we didn't have any plans for a solar collector array.
Really?
No, unfortunately, we did not. It's always aspirational for us, but we did not have plans for that.
Well, it's not mandatory. Should be.
Another flat roof, bites the dust.
Yeah.
Well, it's not permanently bitten, is it? I mean, you could come back at some point with plans to put the solar collecting array on there.
That is true.
Excellent.
Hopefully you'll think about that.
All right.
Thank you. All right.
All right, so that that will conclude our administrative approval items. I will just sort of quickly run through those one more time and read off our one and only stipulation. Administrative approval item number 1, 322 Islington Street was approved with the stipulation that the doors to be installed do not have, and excuse me, Dave,
Face pins.
the face pins.
Face pins.
Yes, this is the first time I'm hearing of the face pins, so no face pins. Item number 2, 355 Pleasant Street, approved as presented. Item 3, 79 Daniel Street, approved as presented. Item 4, 434 Marcy Street, approved as presented. Item 5, 276 Maplewood Avenue, we have continued to next week. Item 6, 114 Maplewood Avenue, approved as presented. Item 7, 238 Deer Street, approved as presented.
So can I get a motion to approve all the administrative approvals except for 5, which is continued?
So moved.
Second? Anybody?
Second.
Okay. All right. Roll call.
Yes.
Dr.
Oh,
Brown?
I'm sorry. Oops.
No, it's okay.
Are you-
Larry's not voting.
I'm
We have-
voting on this.
Margot's here. She's just on Zoom.
Okay. Yes.
Martin?
Approved.
Margot?
Yes.
Okay. John?
Yes.
Rich?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so. All right. All set with the administrative approvals. Thank you, Isaac. Yes. So for public hearings and work sessions, let me just read if we have 3 requests to postpone. The first is public hearing B, which is the petition of Richardson Revocable Trust, owner for property located at 142 State Street. That's the replacement of the slate roof on
And they would
Richardson.
hope to be moved to just next week's
Okay,
meeting versus
hopefully they'll
next
come
week.
back next week. Yes. Work session A is a work session requested by Kevin Shitan Zhang, Revocable Trust of 2017, owner for property located at 377 Maplewood Avenue. I guess they're still working on their plans. And work session B, which is a work session requested by Jeffrey Daniel Berlin, owner for property located at 38 State Street. So could I get a motion to postpone all of those to next month, except for B?
Motion to postpone.
Okay,
Second?
all right. Dr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Approved.
Margot?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Aye.
And Mr. Adams?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. All right, so our first item is the petition of Coventry LLC, owner for property located at 111 State Street, wherein permission is requested to allow changes to a previously approved design, reconfigure rear gable ends to include a recessed porch and dormer, add new windows, change rear center gables siding, and changes to the front entrance doors, as per plans on file in the Planning Department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 107 as Lot 20 and lies within the Character District 4 and Historic Districts.
Good
Welcome.
evening. Thank you for having us back again. Tracy Kozak with Arc of Architects here on behalf of the applicant. We also have an owner's representative, Marie Bodie, here as well to answer any questions. We have made a number of changes based on the comments we received last time, and in fact, we designed 2 different schemes. So hopefully you can find something you can agree on and like, and hopefully we can move forward. I'm happy to tell you the changes we have made as we go through the drawings. And again, just to recap, that there are a number of smaller items around the front and on the roof that were kind of previously approved at the first 2 meetings, and what remains undecided are is the back area where the existing yellow twin gables are. So that's the area we focused on. Existing conditions, this was back in, I think, June or May. I will just want to note for the record that the windows that are being installed, they will be corrected to match what was approved and submitted. We have, thank you for noticing that error. That was not an intentional thing, so that will be fixed. All right, so this is option 1. Option 1. So there are 2 options, basically. As you know, there are 2 existing yellow gables on the property, which were built in the 90s. They are connected yellow gables, and we have a scheme which is revisions to the previous scheme with a single gable and a shed. It replaces the western gable with a shed. We have revised some of the proportions and trim and spacing to make that a little more delicate. That's option 1. Option 2 is keeping the 2 gable look, but also revising and refining some of the trim and proportions and window locations to make it respond to your comments. Roof plan, option 1 with the single center gable and a shed to either side. There are subtle nuances to the sheds on either side. The pitch is the same, but the height of the skirt roofs below are a little different, and the wall to the left has a slight angle, but in general, it's a single gable. This is the 2 gable scheme. There was reference at the last meeting to the Sherburne House at Strawberry Bank. I just want to address that. So as you know, that's a first period house. It's a very different style from what you find on Chief Street today. There are 2 what I'll call gable dormers that are in line with the front wall that are very steep in a sort of Elizabethan vernacular. This is kind of different here. These present themselves in today's state as 2 gable end New Englanders, they call them, gable end houses that are separated by about a 1-inch band of clapboards. So that's what we have today. But given the reference to a long gable end with 2 gable dormers, we do in this scheme have the continuous sloped roof that these gables are set on. So that unifies it in a similar way to Sherburne House, even though we're not bringing it back to first period. Okay, so there's that. That's the front, which was, I believe, approved at the last meeting, or at least there was no contention. We had made the previous revision to change the side lights to solid wood panels instead of glass. And again, no changes to the Chapel Street side from what was previously there. The changes are on the back. This is option 1. So in response to some very good comments about proportions and kind of prototypes on the street, We raised the second and third floor windows up. We lowered the attic opening. We added a 1-foot skirt board at the base, at the bottom of the first floor. And we added a frieze board engaged to the clapboard wall under the rake. So all these things help kind of tighten it up, bring the scale together a little bit more. The windows are the same size. They weren't changed. Oh, we beefed up the corner boards. And that's what happened there. And then on the right, we went back to an asymmetrical window situation. We've ping-ponged a little bit on that. Our original presentation had different windows on either side, and then there was a comment that they should be symmetric, so we made them symmetric, and then there was another comment they should be different, so we're back to different, which is what you see there with the four windows to the right of the center gable. And option 2 is the 2-gable scheme, replicating the same detail refinements I just mentioned on the center gable to the right, and just 2 simple windows on that west gable. There are 2 tiny windows sandwiched in the space in between, and that unifying consistent gable that runs perpendicular along the back, you can see, creates a little valley condition between the 2 windows, between the 2 gables. We have stuck a tiny window in there just to get some functional daylight into the space beyond. And a close-up detail of the gable, showing the trim sizes. That's the recessed nook behind the opening in the attic level. And renderings of the 2 different options, option 1 and option 2. Option 1, option 2, option 1, and option 2. We're presenting some changes in color. I know color is not on your purview, so I don't know if you have any comments on that, but I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Tracy?
If you don't mind, Madam Chairman. I'm going to start out where I think ended up last time, because I think the salient point to me is the vertical scale of this gable structure. Assuming that there's, actually it doesn't matter whether there's 1 or 2 of them, they're both the same, or seem to be the same height. And they're, to me, seem to be higher than any of the other gables. There are 3 other gables across the street in wooden structures, and they all seem like they're going to be not dwarfed, but challenged by this piece that you're building in the back. So, and part of the reason that I believe that I'm going to see this, because it's about me, is the space that you've created between the head of the first floor windows and the sill of the second floor windows. It's enormous by my standards. And likewise on the third floor window, it's overly, to me, overly large. It's uncharacteristic, and it's part of the vertical challenge of this. So the question, I guess, regardless of how, because I don't think I have a huge issue. I would easily move with whether it's a 2 gable as it's interpreted currently, or whether it's 1 gable and a dormer. I don't think that the problem that I'm having with it is not terribly impacted by that part. But my question, I guess, is can you explain to me why this thing has to be so tall?
So we are only raising the eave by 3 feet, and the peak of the ridge is no higher than the existing ridge it's connecting to on the corner. The building directly across the street, the green one, is a full half-story taller, as are several of the others. So you can see the difference on that corner to the right, that we're going up about 3 feet. Also, if you want to look at the very front page of the existing conditions, the center gable where we have the first floor and second floor windows, and you were mentioning the distance between, we're keeping what's there. And again, it was built in the 90s. It's not a historic replica, but we're keeping that same spacing. We're just lifting them all up at the same time, 1 foot. And we're adding 2 on either side. But we're not changing the spacing between the first floor and the second floor window.
But by carrying them all up, you're accentuating it. I mean, okay. And why does it need to be so tall?
We're adding 3 feet at that level to meet code to stand up in that area because it's connected. It's now contiguous with the space behind it, which does have a gable. There are different floor levels in the building, and we're trying to connect it all to be one floor so they can all use the same egress to get to the elevator and stair. So to get the head height to match what's happening behind that to connect to the fire stair, we need 3 more feet of head height.
So the problem is that you're trying to connect too many disparate buildings together?
Yeah, so we started this whole project that the building inspector shut it down, said you need a code compliant fire stair. So it became unoccupied, and we filled in the courtyard, the fire stair, and an elevator to make it handicapped accessible. But there's really only room for 1. Most newer buildings will have 2 fire stairs, 2 exits, but this is such a small footprint, we can do 1. But everybody needs to have access to the exit with proper headroom. It is connecting all these different buildings which were built at different times has proved extremely challenging. They all had different floor heights and roof heights and wall heights, and getting it to all work in a way that they can all share the same safe egress has led to some of these shifts in the eve.
Okay. Anything else? All right, Mr. Wyckoff?
I would just like to say, in general, a comment. Looking at what you've done on the State Street side, you have two separate buildings there, and you have maintained that look very well. Coming around to Chapel Street is fine. And now we're here on the back. You have listened to the comments that were made at our last meeting by the residents of the street. And you've listened to our comments. And one of my comments was, having more substantial corner boards. And so people are asking you to go back to the 2 gable look simply because it's not quite as domineering as the single gable that you had in the center. With all that in mind, I'm willing to accept some of the problems that Mr. Adams has commented on, and to me it's not really a game changer. So my general comment is generally I approve of this project.
Any other questions? Yeah, Larry?
I like what you've done by keeping the second gable, and I think I was the person last week that mentioned Sherborne over at Strawberry Bank. This is one big building, okay, when it's all tied together. I mean, the drone view that's right here on the screen, it's one big building. But by doing what you've done with the 2 gables, which I absolutely love, it makes it appear like all separate buildings. And over the course of the last week, I happened to be driving down Pleasant Street, and I looked over at, check the title of it here, Wentworth Senior Living. It's the same thing. It's one giant building, but they have different facets and different faces, so that from the exterior, it all appears like different row houses, different townhomes. To me, you've done the same magic and you've achieved that effect. I really like what you've done with option 2.
Sure, Dan?
I have to agree, and that option 2 breaks it down nicely. It's also, I think, better balanced too, and the little connector in between, I think, is cute. So I would be happy, I think, even though it's a little bit bigger with option 2.
I would just add that I think both options are appropriate for the historic district. They're properly scaled. The language is proper. The massing's proper. I would leave it up to the applicant. Whatever they would choose, I could support. I do prefer option 2, but it's not about what I prefer. I think option 2 has a nicer quality that relates to the rest of Shape Street, and it's has a nicer scale relatable to Shape Street. So either way, I think that you've got it right, whichever option you choose to go.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone else? Margot, do you have any questions?
No questions, and I am in favor of option 2.
Thank you. Did you have one?
No, I'll just say I think, thank you for listening to the residents and comments, and I think option 2 is what the, yes.
I did have a quick question, which is, are you concerned at all about that space, the valley between the two dormers? And I see that you've got the little window in there and a little piece of, tiny little sliver of roofing there to try and shed off some of that water. But yeah, I'm concerned about just the weathering of that particular.
We're going to have to wrap it all in ice and water shield. That's kind of what not to do when flashing
Yep.
a house, but
Yep.
it's one of the reasons we kind of prefer the other one.
Mhm.
It's more practical to build, but we'll go either way.
Okay. Yeah, that's my concern, is just that, this whole thing is a late 20th century thing that we're fantasizing even more about. But, in terms of how this is going to last, it looks nice, but I just foresee that there'll be some water problems down the road.
We'll take a close look at that.
Okay. All right. I don't think we have any more questions. I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the public who is wishing to speak to, for, or against this project? Please come up to the podium.
Good evening, Sandell Morse, 29 Chapel Street. Okay, so I guess this is my third meeting. And if I had to choose between option 1 and option 2, I would choose option 2. However, there's a phrase that struck me when the architect was presenting, and that was semblance of a gable look. And that's exactly what we have, is a semblance. We don't have a gable. To me, we have a disguised shed dormer, because we're going up 3 feet and we still have a huge, massive building. I was on Zoom for the very first meeting for this project, and you have to refresh my memory. I don't remember whether it was 2019, 2020, it was somewhere in there. Do you guys remember? No.
From the very beginning?
The
they started with
very
the
beginning, the
front of
very
building?
first presentation. Does anybody remember that?
I don't remember the year.
Do you remember the presentation? Do you remember what the very original drawing looked like? I don't have it in my head. I don't have an image, but I do remember that I thought, and please correct me if I'm incorrect, that all of the renovation was going to be pretty much over what was Mr. Kim's, and that there were going to be 4 apartments instead of 2, or something like that, or maybe 6 instead of 4. How, please tell me, did that project develop into this one?
Well, I don't think that we can answer that. It would be more
But
the
as a
architect
historic district commission, when you see a developer coming back with larger and larger and larger and improving incrementally, I have a problem with that. And I have a problem with having to try to keep track of all these meetings as well. So I would like to see nothing changed on the back of that building. I would like to see it remain with those two gables at their height, and I'd like to see the project finished. Those are my very strong feelings. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public wishing to speak?
I'm Jan Howe, 29 Chapel Street in Unit 102. And if our only option is the two options, I do go along with option 2. And I concur with concern of the height being so high, but I kind of understand why code and safety is very important too. But my other question is, it says about changing the color. I just would like to emphasize that whatever color the main building is at the gables could be a different color than that, just to offset it, because it's sort of nice the way it is out there, that even if you don't stick with yellow, that you have something that contrasts it. And thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. Tom Irwin, 28 Chapel Street. Just a few comments. I think it's fair to say that in terms of the vertical scale, I too prefer the current scale of the existing building. That said, of the two options that have been presented, I have a strong preference. I'm speaking for my wife, Lauren Irwin, as well. We have a strong preference for option 2 and retaining the dual gable design. I would echo the prior comment about paint color, and even though it's not within your purview, it sounds as though the developer's willing to make some form of commitment to offsetting the gables from the main building. We agree that that is a benefit to option 2 and the overall design. One question I have a much better understanding. I was struggling at the last meeting with what this recessed porch was, and I have a much better understanding of it now from the designs. I guess just one minor, I won't even say concern, but I do wonder if from a design perspective, the opening for the recessed porch might be squared off at the top to be more consistent with the windows beneath and more consistent with the window in the neighboring gable to the right. Just to make it, and understanding that the width of that opening would be greater than those other windows, at least squaring it across the top from a design perspective might provide some better uniformity. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else from the public? Yes.
Good evening, Marie Bodie, resident of 121 State Street, and I understand this is an interesting perspective to be in as the owner's developer's representative and an immediate abutter. I thought I might just clarify for some of the comments that have been made thus far. I did reach out to Mr. Irwin. We met this afternoon, and to the comment that he just made, Tracy and I spoke about the squaring off of that window door. I don't believe that will be a problem. Number 2, the yellow-ish color will be a Benjamin Moore. It's actually the color of what Tracy Kozak's home used to be, so we're very committed to that. Number 3, the history of this project has evolved significantly since 2019. The economy has changed. In 2019, we had a tenant, which was Agave, which was in the building. They had been in there for 10 years. It had been quite dilapidated with that non-owner presence. As you know, we went through the approval process to convert Agave into Sol. During that process, the 107 Mr. Kim's building became available. We purchased it, unbeknownst to us, quite frankly, just how dilapidated it, to quote Mark, it's the worst building he's ever been in the city of Portsmouth. So it has been reconstructed from the ground all the way up painstakingly. We've come before this board numerous times. We've heard and responded, addressed the concerns. So we are where we are. It's a completely different design. Yes, we've gone from a 2-story restaurant to a 1-story single floor. We've made massive improvements, as you know, because you've been through these meetings as well, to address nano wall windows and opening that all up to have a vibrant retail restaurant. We are proceeding, have a very good viable candidate for that occupancy. Additionally, the housing market in the city of Portsmouth has changed tremendously. Trying to attract labor to the restaurants that we own and operate has been of great concern. You'll see projects coming before you that McNabb Properties and the developer group will be presenting in the very near future. We are taking this housing situation very seriously. So we are very happy to submit this evening. We're happy to take option 1 off the table and have the HDC please consider approving option 2 with the modification as Mr. Irwin just requested, and we commit to a yellowish, whatever the Benjamin Moore color is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else in the public? One last call. Anyone online? All right. Okay, great. Then I will close the public hearing and wait a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with the stipulations provided by the applicant.
So option number 2.
Option 2 is part of those stipulations and some of the window and color, paint color considerations. So that's my motion.
All right.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion and give some findings of fact?
I'll just say that it is preserves the integrity of the district and is consistent with the special and defining character of the surrounding properties.
All right, any other discussion? I'll just also thank you for, sorry, were you going to speak?
Yeah, I'll just add that this will hopefully, could allow the project to finish as soon as possible. Hopefully it'll be less disturbing to the neighbors.
Yes, and I was just going to say, yes, it is a big project. Obviously, this building needed a lot of work. And so thank you for working with everybody, listening, and taking a lot of our comments into consideration. All right. Roll call vote. Dr. Brown?
Yes.
Martin?
Approved.
Margot?
Approved.
All right. John?
Yes.
Rich?
Aye.
David?
No.
The chair votes aye, so thank you. You have your approval. All right. Thanks. All right. Next is public hearing C, which is a work session public hearing requested by Matthew Morton Associates LLC, owner, for property located at 87 Market Street, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, replace windows and doors, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 106 as Lot 43 and lies within the Character District 4, Downtown Overlay, and Historic Districts. All right.
I have to recuse myself from this one.
Okay. Who is here to present this? Okay. Should we all go down, if we're doing a work session public hearing, do we all want to go down to the table? Yeah?
You're doing well.
Hi, welcome. Please please come introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Aaron Lynn. I work for Marvin. I am here to assist Jeff Jones, Main Coast Builders, in the window portion of this project.
Great. So last time we met with you and we asked for a little bit more information, so can you tell us what provided in addition?
Well, so there was a lot of questions about the windows, you know, what they were actually going to look like and how they were going to be trimmed out. I know there was a few questions as far as the upper windows that were big picture windows with flanking. You know, would like to see those changed, but also the bay windows on the Dolphin, on the restaurant, and on there was a question regarding the radius of the storefront windows, which you know, has been corrected. So those were the issues regarding the windows that.
Yeah. And was it all windows? I was a little confused. How many windows?
All of them.
All three sides?
All three sides, correct, yeah. I don't know how many that was, to be honest with you.
Yeah. At all.
And doors as well, or no?
There's two doors, two of the people doors on the apartments up above, but the storefronts and the restaurant where we're going to keep all that original, the original doors for those.
All right.
Okay, well, I'll kick this off. So one of the challenges with this building is that there are lots of different windows and lots of different openings, and there's not a lot of uniformity. And you know, one of the things that we're looking at is, you know, how do we first kind of bring some uniformity back to this building, but in keeping with what's going on. The first step we took was to look at the actual openings themselves and kind of determine roughly what has happened over the years past. And there's examples of you know, windows from the 70s. There's replacement windows from probably the 40s and 50s. Didn't see any evidence of original windows there, but it's kind of hard to tell. But and there are some windows that have been replaced in the 90s, so it's all over the map. So one of the things I think in general, if there's a common theme about the building, and that is to get back to the masonry opening, get back to the original opening. It appears that over the years they basically stepped in these openings to accommodate most likely standard size windows, and we're not doing that here. So we're going back to the original masonry openings, more traditional moldings that you expect to see. We're looking at profiles that would be consistent with what you'd expect to see in buildings of this size. We took our buildings of this age. We took measurements off of the existing windows relating to the Muntin bars, some of the profiles. Again, terribly inconsistent, but the most consistent numbers we found, we kind of expanded those out to cover the entire building. And there, you know, one consistent number is the Muntins we found to be 7/8 thick. We have options to go really in any direction, whatever would suit your tastes, but 7/8 seems to be the most consistent. You know, when it comes to, there's I think a total of 4 round tops, radius topped units. We'd go back to the masonry opening on those, and instead of doing a radius top window, we would do a square top filler. It's kind of impossible to know what was there originally, but there's examples of both going into buildings that time period. From Jeff's standpoint, doing something that is square across those tops aids in what's going on in the inside of the building, and there's some ceiling scenarios that have stepped down, so makes it kind of difficult to go to round top units there. But however, we can look at that if it's something that's desired. I have more specifics. I don't know how deep we want to go into this. I know that one of the concerns was those front windows, the storefront windows, macro poles windows, and Marvin is able to match those top radiuses perfectly. In fact, we do so by taking a template of what's there, and we mill it at our factory to match that exact existing radius. And we actually construct the windows the same way. So what's there is likely a square window with an applied radius top. And we would do it the same way, basically, in our factory, but using insulated glass.
When you say a square window, you mean a square piece of glass?
Yes. Yeah.
With trim applied to the face of it. One thing that we can't see is what's going on in that interface between the sash and the frame. I'm sure you understand, one of the things that is difficult for us is we don't have a broad history. Our town is built in so many different periods, and so much has happened. This building, this isn't the first storefront on this building. This isn't the first set of fenestration on this building. It's been redone a couple of times, and then many things happen in the process. What we do see is the remains of a grand cast iron storefront, unlike anything else in our community, and would hate to have someone come back to us and say, well, this is the best we could do to fit something into this. That's just a place that, if we're given our choices, we don't want to go. And so we need confidence to all raise our hand and say, yes, I'm supporting this. And so the idea of templating these things is important. What happens to the big square storefront windows?
So the large storefront windows are built as an assembly at our factory and installed in place. So we're not glazing on site. So these will be a framed window that goes in place, a direct glaze window, and then they would be the trim would be trimmed to approximate what's currently there, which is a kind of a simple round over.
It seemed like a quarter round to me.
It's a quarter round, a robust quarter round.
3/4, maybe 7/8 inch.
Yep, yeah, and they're thick, and we would simulate that. Actually, Jeff would simulate that. We're just supplying the window part of that.
Sorry, can you
Yes.
simulate?
Duplicate? Sorry. Okay.
Good word.
Sorry.
I'm looking at your proposal, and I appreciate, just to say that I appreciate the idea that you're taking those picture window assemblies, which appeared, we'll just say in 1965, I don't think that they're making a historic statement by putting mullioned sashes in them, but what you are doing is giving the look of the building a little bit more regularity. To make the windows seem at least sympathetic to each other. And while we aren't replicating a historic thing, we are making things seem a little bit more normal.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. The next question I have is what happens on and pardon me, the Dolphin Striker section. Your initial proposal was to put double hungs in there.
Yeah, originally, because it was more of a makeup area for the restaurant when that happened, but I kind of get the feeling that wasn't very well
Sure.
received. So, we could just keep it to maybe casements or something that would just open within the
And do
bounds
you
of the
think that
building.
will necessitate the change of the frames, of the framing of that, the shape of that wall?
Well, not really, maybe.
Yeah,
Aaron
so when we looked at those openings, they are, the wood surrounding the windows is suspect. So no matter what we're going to do there, it involves replacing a fair amount of wood around those units. Our thought is to provide this as an assembly, and we obviously can build any size window to any shape. And provide this as a radiused assembly that drops in. And we can keep the same dimensions. Again, it was a 7/8 SDL, 7/8 Muntin bars there. The owner of the building would prefer to do double hungs for two reasons. One, as Jeff mentioned, for makeup air, but also to create an atmosphere that's a little more conducive. You're inside, you hear a little bit more of what's going on outside, and vice versa. Outside can feel a little bit more part of what's going on the inside. So the double hungs facilitate that. However, introducing a double hung there, and I'll flip this around here, I'm sorry, you probably can't see this. Maybe it's easier in the larger, but the double hungs do introduce that check rail, and that's a departure from what's there. So a secondary solution would be to put casement units in there with limiters so they don't extend out into the sidewalk. But that keeps essentially a very, very similar pattern, both in grill and weight and structure. Stays closer with casements. First choice would be double hung due to their operation and function of the space. The second would be casements.
All right, Ms. John.
I guess the problem with double hungs also would be the fact that you'd have to have some sort of screening on those. And this is a problem that we always have, obviously. None of your windows should have full screens on them. I guess the problem I had with the actual front of the building, with the cast iron storefront, as Mr. Adams was talking about, is how you're going to integrate pre-manufactured units, probably with nailing fin type of situation, probably with extruded aluminum around the perimeter. How are these going to be put into a, lack of a better word, in 19th century carpentry filler around to you know, obviously you preserve the cast iron windows, but it's, what I'm wondering is, what is the condition of these big plate glass windows that are there now? I assume they're big, at least a quarter of an inch thick glass windows. I'm wondering if they were taken out of the equation, would you still be able to, I guess I can see that you wouldn't have the efficiency as far as energy efficiency goes. But is there any way that you could build some sort of unit to go inside of them, and then keeping the carpentry aspect of this front instead of a metal storefront? Because that's what I'm afraid of. I mean, we've seen places, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've got, you know, a door that goes in, and you've got your extruded aluminum all over the place, and you've changed what Mr. Adams says is one of the few existing storefronts. So that's my concern there. And the other question I had is, you're talking about the top units. I didn't quite understand if they are currently have that round over. Is that the glass, or is that applied wood on the outside?
It's applied wood to the outside.
So they're just a regular rectangle awning window?
As best we can tell, without actually dismantling them, the glass does go all the way up. It would stand to reason that would be a square piece of glass with that applied on the top. And
what do you mean the best you can tell? I mean, you could just go on the inside and look.
We don't have access to the inside.
Why not?
On a couple of the sections. Oh. But even if we did go to the inside, it's the same applied wood on the inside. I mean, you can peek up and see
you can peek up,
but you don't know how far that glass goes up.
Yeah.
It would be very surprising to me if it wasn't a square piece of glass.
Yeah.
Based on what I've seen.
I have a quick follow-up question to this discussion, which is, did you consider putting in just an interior storm for all of these to get the efficiency you're looking for, but not have to
I don't know
mess
if
with
it's
anything?
so much efficiency as it is the rot and decay of the wood sashes that are holding the glass in.
Even for the storefronts?
The first
yeah.
The first floor.
First floor.
First floor, storefront.
Well, that's why you have carpenters.
Exactly.
It's that, and my concern is the same, that when you replace everything on the exterior, even if it's duplicated or simulated or anything like that, it's still going to be fresh and new, and you're going to see some joints, and you don't have that buildup of those paint layers that make it apparent that you're dealing with an original, or at least a very historic, material right there. And that's what, honestly, I mean, you can put new storefronts on any, new building that mimic this, but losing that is what is a major loss for the historic district, for, people walking around and seeing and understanding this is actual tangible history.
Continuing with the theme, I don't believe that there's anyone, maybe you, but certainly none of us or anyone we know, that has any real ideas to how the wooden portion of the storefronts and the cast iron portions are integrated. We see them when we stand there, but as the Chair says, they're covered with many layers of paint, which we lovingly look at as our historic patina, that demonstration of this is an old town. It wasn't recreated and put here. This is how we got here. And the parts of it, I'm sure, are past their life expectancy, their service life. I got that. But as Mr. Wyckoff has said, we have seen many times, not from you, but I'm sure you've seen it too. I'm not making this up. When people make an attempt in good faith to hook or hooch some new thing or the thing that they make into the space that is here, and it doesn't work out, then what do we do? Then what do we have? And you say you haven't dug into this far enough to even really know for certain.
Just the top.
Just the
radius,
tops.
Just the tops.
The sides, you believe you've got that figured out?
Well, the sides.
I mean, the sides, the big panels.
The bulk of it. What we're proposing is not an exact replica. And what we're proposing is something that is similar. And I understand your concerns, and there are ways for us to build the exact replica of that. We do things like that often. What we were looking at were units that were a more standard type of unit that is easier to build and easier to work with.
Yeah.
I'd also like to, if I may, real quickly address your original question. So these, at this level, these windows are actually installed like they would have been 50 or 100 years ago. We don't use nailing fins, and they're more traditional through jam type installations. So the fastening is all hidden, and that is what allows you to make traditional trim and woodwork to the exterior.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to see like
Can I get in
2x4. Excuse me, one more second. 2x4s stuffed in there, nailing fins go on, put a little piece of square trim over it and say, thank you, ma'am. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm sorry, Mark.
Go ahead.
This is my problem with the application. I keep seeing standard details. You said you have something you want to do. Is it reflected in here? Because
So what we have done for these storefront windows are a more of a traditional direct glazed unit, and we were going to match, or Jeff was going to match the exterior trim. If we're looking to match the exact kind of massing and weight of that window, then the options are either we salvage that window and restore it, and that is certainly something that can be done. That's not something that Marvin would do, but that's something that Jeff and team would do. If we are looking to replace that with an insulated glass with modern technology and modern thermal values, that can be done. It kind of pushes it into a different realm with Marvin, but it's something we do all the time.
I was going to say that Marvin's a great company, but sometimes you're not appropriate for possibly this project. I would go to a glazer for the storefront and simply start there. No offense. I have every confidence you can do the masonry openings. I just don't know that, like it was said here earlier, you're going to try and take your product and make it fit this application. I'm still seeing half-round windows. There's no half-round windows. I know. I don't see it there.
I know. I was just going to say what I see on your screen. We don't have, so we don't have that, which would be helpful for us to actually.
Well, I sent it to Isaac. I mean, it was sent back last week.
We got the.
We were given what's on the screen.
We got the
here.
drawings.
It appears, I'm sorry, your name. Aaron. Aaron, it appears you have more window details in your actual sheets that were not given to us. So I think that's maybe the
So there's a little
misunderstanding.
confusion. What we have are the scale drawings and then the old submittal. So, it would be helpful to have all of these like much more.
So just to continue, this is going to end up a record for the application. And to see half-rounds, if you have the latest and greatest drawings, this is a work session, maybe next meeting, we can get what we're looking for, what I'm looking for personally. So
That's my comment. I'm just frustrated that we're seeing whole building elevations. We're seeing window types, and I would expect the elevations to key the window types so that we're on the same page.
When you say half rounds, what?
They're in the spec.
That's what you've
Yeah,
got
just
spec'd
the-
out as.
The old specs.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you, okay.
The
Yeah,
old,
And I'm seeing details that could, that just aren't applicable.
We have a functional problem that this, at some point, we have a package, and that's what we hand over to our inspectors, who actually, in case something goes wrong, are the first line of defense, so to speak. And if they have information that isn't correct, then I can't get them to do nothing. This is all from, we have a precious resource, we believe, that we're managing. And there's no more of it coming. And so we believe the better we can care for it, the better our community is. That's why we're here.
well said, David.
Pardon?
Well said. Very good.
I do have another question that it wasn't clear from the drawings because we don't have this more recent set of specifications. Other than the proposed change and the sort of the Dolphin Striker windows, are there any other changes in terms of the number of lights in each one, or are the big picture windows going to remain, or are they getting? Okay.
Those are the pic.
Well, I don't know why I didn't see this.
Yeah,
part of
that's
it,
all
sorry.
right.
Okay.
But that's a good thing you've done with
Yes.
the picture one.
That's fine.
Love
Okay,
this.
good. So that's in the record. I was just confused because I didn't see
Yeah.
that before.
And we are able to match all the existing light count, so all the existing light count stays the same.
Great.
It's really the storefronts.
Yeah.
I don't hear any real heartburn concerning the second, third floors, fourth floor, actually, on Ceres Street. It's the storefronts.
Do you intend in the regular windows throughout the rest of the other two sides of the building, do you intend to change any masonry openings?
No.
Do you intend to do repair work to any of the existing masonry openings?
As needed, if it needs, when taking the other ones out.
Major work, or brick here and brick
Yeah,
there?
no, brick here, brick there.
No new headers,
So
no
the
new
original-
sills?
Possibly with the headers. I know they had a window out on the, above the, what's the Bow Street, what's the front street on the Dolphin Strike, aside that street there, the
That's
upper
Bow.
window.
Bow,
Oh,
Bow
I'm
Street.
sorry, Bow.
Yeah.
I know one of the windows, they were doing work on that third, on the apartment on the top floor, had a wooden header that was powder,
Replace it in kind, in shape and size? That's maintenance.
Yes.
What I'm trying to wrap this around, I think we have three issues. One is the regular windows that your drawings that you gave us all seem to address pretty well. And your statements say that you're going to utilize the masonry openings that are there. I think everyone here believes that the 7/8 mullion is appropriate to the age of this general fenestration of the building, not the earliest, but what's there now, with additions and subtractions. To me, we have three issues. The bulk of the work, which sounds like just pretty normal replacement. We've seen this done many times. The other is the changes to that section of Dolphin Striker. Because of its proximity to the sidewalk and the gangs of people that go by, I'm skeptical about the double hung sashes with screens surviving at all. And I recognize what you're saying about make-up air, but I don't think our code enforcement officers see opening windows as an adequate form of make-up air in a restaurant. But the other one is the actual cast iron storefront. I would be comfortable breaking this into a couple of pieces so that you could get on with your lives and your program. I would be comfortable if you were to actually, given the appropriate time in your schedule, to take apart one of the storefront pieces and finish your investigation and give us this is how we're going to approach this. Because in many respects, it's pretty simple stuff. They're big pieces of glass, so the openings are right there, and you're not going to move the cast iron.
No.
So that seems simple, other than that interface problem. And that's where I think anyone that's ever been down this road is going to get hung up. I've taken a couple of turn-of-the-century Conair storefronts apart, and getting them back together again was sleepless nights. Because so many things aren't available, and you have to somehow justify how we're going to get this done and still be able to present a bill to the owner that he'll want to pay.
What I'm wondering about is the size of these plate glass windows. Are these exceptional? Are these beyond the scope of thermopane glass? They aren't.
No, we're pretty comfortable. We go quite a bit larger.
So what are they, like 5 feet wide and 7 or 8 feet tall?
87 by 97, if my recollection. Wow.
That takes a lot of suction cups
It
to
does.
lift that thing up.
They're probably 400-pound windows.
Yeah.
Do you believe that the cast iron frames are adequate to support them?
So the cast iron frame, from what I looked at, looks quite healthy. I don't see much wrong with the cast iron
They
frame.
hold
And
up
the
the
cast iron
building.
frame's not supporting the base
It's
of the
the
window.
underneath,
size.
it's supporting the weight that I'm kind of concerned more with, how that.
So may I ask a question on the Bow Street side, the floor windows, the curved section, being that screens are a concern street level, would casements be an option because casements put the screen to the inside? Would that be something you'd be more comfortable with? Okay.
Or is a single hung screen on the inside, just at the top?
You're still going to run into the same screen.
With a fixed center window?
It's fixed center, and the two ones that are tapered in would open up just far enough to allow ventilation but not interfere with sidewalk.
Can I just throw something on the table here? Did you do any research to say, look at what the Athenaeum offers for what this may have been? Because I ask this because these shapes that we're looking at, these little curved shapes, they're kind of odd. You got cast iron, you have infill, you have window. Could it be possible that the glazing went all the way to the cast iron, and that there was some kind of frame receiver at the cast iron that maybe, I know this is a lot to throw on the table, but maybe you go back to something even more original than what is there now?
That's a very good point.
Yeah, that is a good question, to which I have no answer for, but
Yeah.
it's a good,
I
very
would-
good question.
Doubt it, but it's always worth going to the Athenaeum and asking for, any historic photos they have, so that because that might answer some questions as to why this happened and this happened,
This is what, 1850 or so, this building? Those are large pieces of glass for that period.
Oh, well, I would think that the
Because they-
storefront went in later than that.
So you
Not
think it was,
original.
This is
Just all
easily the
built.
second storefront on this building.
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if those curves in the corners of that upper transom windows, that the glass is square and that the wood is curved, just to make it seem like.
Right, that's what they were.
Okay.
I would be
didn't
surprised.
follow
I
that.
would agree with you.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if it wasn't done.
Okay. Margot, did you have any questions or?
I don't know why we look to the ceiling.
No, this has been fascinating to follow. I agree that doing a little more research on what might have been there before might help to inform what changed and maybe how it changed, which might help you in your investigations on how to move forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can ask anyone from the public to speak to this, but then I want to figure out how we're going to move forward. So is there anyone from the public who wants to speak just to the work session portion of this? Please come.
Jane Mann, I'm managing partner of this building, and I would respectfully request that if you are happy with the upper part, that you would okay that so that we can get moving, because we're up against weather. And we have apartments that, you know, we're having leakage and they would like new windows. So if we could at least get that settled, then maybe we could spend more time looking at what else is involved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Anyone online?
I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay, great.
Is this a public hearing?
This is a work session / public hearing.
Yeah, so we could do that.
Yeah, so we can close the, well, I don't know. So the issue with moving forward and okaying the second and third floor, the upper floor windows, is that we don't have these new specifications for our records. So I think everyone's fine with it to move forward. I don't know if it's something that we can postpone just to next week so that you can submit all of these, and then next week we can vote on it just so that we have that in the record and you guys can move forward with getting those windows in the masonry opening. Is a week too much to ask?
No,
Okay.
that's, yeah,
And
fine.
cut
So we
macro
just-
polo right
Yeah.
out for the time being.
Yeah.
Right, and we can vote on that next week. I don't want to make them take it out because then they have to do another application. So, yeah.
Yes, no, all right, so just so I'm clear,
Mhm.
what is it that you need for the windows? Do you?
I know.
Do you know it?
Yes.
Okay.
You got it?
All right.
Yeah, I do. You wanted clarification over the round top windows that are there. What's initially in those shop drawings shows them being as a radius top.
Mhm.
What we're proposing now is to do a square top.
Right, what you
Yeah.
have here.
Yes.
Let me try to integrate your new plate glass windows with your frame around them.
Right.
Into
Right.
a carpentry.
Right, if you
Environment.
take a little bit of,
This is I grabbed a stock photo just
Yeah. Mhm.
as representation, but that's the squared top fitting into a radius.
Oh, okay, nice.
so, yeah, we can sort of continue the storefront window section and give you a chance to do a little bit more investigation so that you can give us some basically construction details of how it's all going to come together, or potentially the option of saving your historic plate glass. But otherwise, next week, if you bring it in next week, even just for, we can do this quickly. I know there's already a big, a good size agenda for next week, but this should be a quick vote, and that'll give you time to put the casement
Put the
specifications
casement
together, and then those can all be voted on and moved forward.
Chair.
Yes.
Something else that we haven't talked about is the heat pump enclosures. They're changed.
So that, yeah, is something that we have to address, and I'm not sure what the new mini splits will be. Will they be bigger or smaller, more or less? Maybe we can get them both into one instead of having two of those ugly facades sticking there. I'd like to get rid of one of them, maybe it can all fit in one. And I haven't really gone down that road yet, but we could design something for you to look at and approve at that time when we get to that. Maybe more just the lattice work around, like
Sure.
you showed on a previous
And
the
I'm
case.
sure lattice work is appropriate on, federal buildings.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well,
We
we'll
could
see.
I know
design
it did, but it's something we have to
Yeah.
discuss.
Well, we can discuss that further, or that can be, whenever you figure it out, you can bring that back to us as an administrative approval. It can kind of just be a quick approval, so that won't be part of the vote on the windows, but, great. Any other questions or comments? So, I'm going to close the work session portion of this and ask for a vote to continue the public hearing to next week.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Go around again.
Aye.
Approved.
Margot?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
David?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. thank you. I'm glad that we can figure out how to keep this moving forward.
Little
So-
steps, we're getting there.
Yes.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much. This was very helpful.
All right, so we'll see you
Thank
next
you so
week,
much.
and
Okay.
good luck with the investigation. All right. Back up, yes. One more public hearing. All right. Next is public hearing D, petition of Emily Niehaus and Bernard Rosler, owners for property located at 44 Gardner Street, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, replace all windows, siding, window casings, and corner boards as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 103 as Lot 42 and lies within the general residence B and historic districts.
Madam Chair, I'd like to recuse myself. I've entangled myself in this project.
I do just want to point out that the HVAC and venting portion of this was already approved at a previous meeting, so that's taken care of. So, yes.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair. Jeff Kissel, Dockham Builders here in Portsmouth. We met back in May where we talked about the HVAC system, some exterior venting, and the removal of the siding, exterior trim, and window replacement. As Isaac said, we moved forward with the HVAC stuff, but we took the month of June to reevaluate some things, take your comments, and then July we postponed again as Emily and Bernie welcomed their first newborn. So we're here in August, and basically we took your comments. We are going to replace in kind the siding and the exterior trim and continue to move forward with the window replacement as well. Besides that, I don't have any other comments for you. It's going to be a cedar siding, which we believe is, there's a mix and match all over this building of what the actual siding is. It's been patched in, it's been fixed many times. It really is, it's a mess. And I hope some of the pictures that you saw, you can understand that. Our guess is somewhere between 65 and 75% of the building needs to be replaced. Really, the only good part is what is underneath the front overhang. To kind of explain ourselves a little bit from our previous meeting, I don't know if members of this board were here, but there was a renovation done on the front porch, and there was PVC put all over that, and we thought, no, let's continue to do that. We also, earlier in that meeting, another one of our projects, we had used composite siding and PVC trim with Marvin windows, so we thought that was something, let's carry that to this project as well. Understand the sensitivity to this part of town more than where our other project was. So that's why, we reevaluated the costs, everything with it in your comments, and that's where we are today. So,
Thank you. So just for clarification, what's in the application still says Hardy and AZEC and stuff like that, but what you're presenting is wood.
This may have been, I don't know if this is maybe just the old, or the original one.
that's the original one. There was one uploaded on the deadline date. There was a whole write-up uploaded there to Viewpoint. And probably about, which was painful, about 30 pictures, so you could.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've got.
Because what's tough is you have to upload them. For you to actually visualize like the picture really well, you have to upload the file directly. As before, we put it into a PDF file, and it loses its ability for you to see the quality of the photo. But for instance, if Isaac, if you could just stop there.
Yeah.
This is the back of the building. The other photos that we submitted, I went through and I highlighted every single section, and I showed where there were seams that were all consistently straight cut through, and really the rot that is throughout this building on almost all the trim, the sills, and then We weren't going to touch much of the cornice, but there's a lot of it is rotted. A lot of it around the renovated front porch is in really bad shape. So we're going to replace it all in kind with the wood, pine for the corner boards and cedar for the clapboards, matching profiles on everything. And then there was a comment by the chair that you don't want pre-primed finger jointed clapboards. So we were going to prime them off-site in our shop in Greenland and then install them and then paint it afterwards. So, yeah.
That's probably your best bet in getting them to last a little
So-
longer. Great.
Regarding windows, I know there was a comment about new construction windows. To explain why we are still proposing that, Mr. Wyckoff particularly, is that this is balloon framed. So this isn't traditionally framed windows that we might see now. There are no jack studs, king studs, there's no headers. All the framing is just running from the bottom plate to the top plate. And then there's a cavity where the lead weights are. Not many of them exist anymore. And so we have nothing to fasten replacement windows into. So we would be putting in a new plate through what is the cripple underneath, a new plate on top, and then fastening around with the new construction window. If you drive around the south end,
Shrinking that opening.
no, we would be.
You would have to shrink the framing in order to give you something to nail your new construction windows to, because the framing is about 3 or 4 or 5 inches more.
Oh yeah, probably more.
Yeah. because-
We'll cut down 1.5 inches underneath, and so then that plate will sit flush underneath, and then we'll keep the openings. And we will be back for administrative approvals for exact window sizes if this were to move forward on that, because we will pop windows off and get the exact rough openings.
So, sorry, let me just to clarify this again now. So you are using new
Correct.
construction windows,
Correct.
not the sash replacements?
Correct. If you, and just for reference, if you drive through the south end right now, 64 South Street, 66 South Street, 306 Marcy Street, 30 Gardner Street, all 4 of those places are under construction right now with new construction windows approved by the HDC with zip tape around everything. So it is something that you guys do approve as a board. So.
Sure. No, we approve it as a board. We hope that what you had explained is done so that you don't lose the size of the glass.
Yeah, that is the intention.
So
Yep.
That's the hope of things. Okay, any questions? Mr. Kisel?
I have one comment. I'd like to thank you and your owners to the idea of going back to wood, and it's a great house. It's a great area, and it's going to make it look great. Thank you.
Yeah, and the street has seen renovations, and we really kind of want to bring it back to the rest of the neighborhood as well. The inside is a beautiful home, and we think the outside is just kind of fallen apart a little bit, and we want to preserve it, wrap it, take care of it to make sure it lasts the next 100 years.
Reagan, if I may.
Yes, please.
So I think I heard you say that you're going to be milling off-site and bringing the wood on and then painting in place. Is that what you said?
We would be painting off-site, priming the raw wood off-site, and then installing it, and then painting the final 2 coats.
Okay. And how many coats of primer are you planning on both sides of the wood?
What would you prefer? 2?
10.
Okay. The reason I'm mentioning this is not just for you, but also for the owners. This house is very close to the water. It gets a lot of different beatings from different types of weather. The best thing that the owners can do is to have you put very well primed wood on and then paint it in place, but then make a concerted effort as owners to paint this building on a regular basis before it even looks like it needs it. It will be a huge cost savings for them in the long run if they never let any of that paint peel, because that's what allows the rot in. And I know that people think, oh, it looks fine, it looks fine, it looks fine, but if you push it too long, it doesn't look like it's peeling, but it is peeling. And that's when you start getting the problems with wood siding. So just a piece of advice from, someone who's seen a little bit. It's much, much better if they continue to keep this place well painted, particularly in this location. So I'm in favor. I thank you very much for switching to the natural wood, but hope that adding a little bit of prevention will keep from having to spend a lot on the cure.
Thank you. Duly noted.
All right. Yes.
So the only thing I'm trying to look at these windows, and I'm hoping that these rough openings and everything, all of your windows you've got spec'd, these will end up being the same size as the sashes that are there now.
Correct.
Correct. I just want that on record, that's all.
All right. Great. Any other questions? All right. All right, anyone from the public wishing to speak to this application? Anyone online? Okay. Yes.
One more comment, I
Yeah,
guess.
sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know if this is public comment. The other thing, just so you know, it was something, Chair, that you had brought up, is your concern of waste and all that stuff. We're well aware as builders what we provide for waste. We donate almost everything we can, from cabinets, doors, countertops, and so we don't just throw out stuff. We will try our best to donate these, give them away, try to salvage them. If we put these out on the street, someone picks them up within 24 hours. But there are architectural salvage places. Hampton Falls has one that we would bring them to and have them taken care of too.
Okay.
So
Great, yeah, because my only comment is just the sadness of seeing old windows being taken away and that beautiful wavy glass and the weight of the sash and all of those things. But I also recognize that some of these are in poor condition and there's an inconsistency in the windows throughout the house. So they're not pristine. But yes, I'm going to close the public hearing and wait a motion for this.
I'll move that we approve as presented.
All right.
Second?
I believe it preserves the integrity of the district and is compatible with design and surrounding properties.
Any other discussion on this? And just thank you again for coming back with hearing our concerns, and good luck with all that primer. All right, we'll do a roll. Yes.
Not worth if it's stipulating half screens if screens should be used.
Thank you.
Where are they?
I don't know that it's necessary.
I think it says full screen.
All right, so we will stipulate a half screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll be back.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, all right, good.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll do a roll call vote. Larry?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Martin? John?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Margot?
Yes.
And chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Now we're moving to public hearing and work session, getting to State Street, but maybe we want a quick break. Anybody need a quick break beforehand? Because I'll do 5 minutes, very quick, just a quick. Thank you. We're back from a quick break. All right. The next thing that we have is public hearing 1 for new business, which is the petition of PNF Trust of 2013, owner, for property located at 278 State Street, wherein permission is requested to allow the full demolition of the existing structure, the Times Building, as per plans on file in the Planning Department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 107 as Lot 78 and lies within the Character District 4, Downtown Overlay, and the Historic Districts. Hi there.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Chris Mulligan. I'm an attorney at DTC Lawyers here in Portsmouth, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant, the PNF Trust of 2013. We're before you today seeking permission to demolish what remains of 278 State Street. I think Trevor may want to speak to you about sort of the history of this, so I would, if that's the case, I would cede the podium to Attorney McCourt and have him give you a little history, and then I'll come back.
That would be great. So, Trevor, if you wouldn't mind giving us an abbreviated outline of the history, that would be great, just so that we have that straight for the public.
Sure. Thank you, Chair, members of the HDC. My name is Trevor McCourt. I'm the Deputy City Attorney. And I am here to, as we discussed, or as discussed, provide a little bit of history and background just to sort of set the table for the board as you work through this application and the various options available to you tonight. So I will just start. Back in 2017, the summer of 2017, there was a fire on State Street, which destroyed a large portion of the buildings located adjacent to 278 State Street, destroying several residential units and a good portion of what was then the State Street Saloon. Thereafter, the property owner, represented by the trust, applied to this commission for permission to demolish the remaining structure. That process took a couple of months and involved the preparation of 4 separate expert structural reports regarding the structural integrity of that remaining structure, which still stands here today. Those reports were conflicting in nature, and this board, as is your purview and your duty, resolved the conflicts of those reports and found that the building could be maintained and should be maintained following, again, the review criteria available to you. That decision was appealed to the Board of Adjustment, which affirmed in part your order, this commission's order, and found really that the 2 exterior facades on Church and State Street were to be maintained and were to be preserved, given their historic nature. The property owner then appealed that decision to Superior Court. That arrived in Superior Court at the end of 2017, and it remained there for a period of years until 2023. During that time, the property owner, in conjunction with city staff, worked to prepare alternative proposals for the redevelopment of the property, but were waylaid for a variety of reasons, including the inability to kind of make a proposed development there work, given the facade, the cost of maintaining the facade, and the installation of a transformer, given Eversource's restrictions on how those are to be located on the property. City staff, Nick Cracknell, Dave DeFosis, worked really hard with the property owner. I think everybody was working in the same direction, but really Eversource was pretty intransigent, and no solution was ever arrived to, although I do understand that proposals were submitted here to this board, to the planning board, et cetera, and were approved. They obviously were never constructed. Then the next thing that happened was in May of 2023, the Superior Court finally ruled on the pending litigation. That's that same denial coming out of 2017. And they affirmed the Board of Adjustments determination, finding that they reasonably reconciled, as this commission did, the conflicting expert reports. Thereafter, earlier this year, there was some renewed litigation between the city and the trust owning the property, and Mr. Floros. Really, what that was around is whether the building is safe. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. Whether it's safe, whether it constitutes a threat to public safety, and you know what the appropriate next step should be. That lawsuit, I think there were the court found that there were some procedural missteps in that lawsuit, and it was therefore dismissed earlier in June. Thereafter, Attorney Kazinovich, on behalf of Mr. Floros, sent to the city a report from Fred Emanuel, which indicated that the structure is unsafe and has the potential of progressive collapse and needs to be demolished immediately. That same day, the city took steps to barricade the area immediately around the remaining building at 278 State Street. 2 days later, the city had its own expert, Jeff Naraki, go out and take a look at the building to determine whether that perimeter that was established would be sufficient in the event of collapse, and whether the building is in imminent danger of falling. Mr. Naraki concluded first that the perimeter was appropriate, and second, that the building is not an imminent safety hazard, but using an abundance of caution, he did recommend that we keep the barrier up until the hazard is remediated or removed. Sorry, I forget which word he used in particular there, but that was his letter. So I think, and I'll leave Attorney Mulligan to advocate the position of Mr. Floros, but I think the purpose of coming here tonight is to really reevaluate the Commission's position on whether that building should be demolished or not, whether it can be demolished or not by the property owner, given their other proposals that they have that they are working on for this Commission. Therefore, the way I see it, there are really three paths forward that I would recommend to this Commission. First would be to, of course, deny the demolition permit. That's certainly an option after you work through your review criteria. Second, to grant the demolition permit, which you could do with conditions, of course. You could also grant a partial approval, which, given that was not, which would just be for the demolition here, which, given that's not on the agenda, would require a 2/3 vote. Third, you could request more information and continue the proposal, but that could only be done with the assent of the applicant. And you know, I will highlight something that I think that the chair and I spoke about earlier today, which is that this is a little bit unusual. I mean, this is all very unusual, of course, but the application itself is unusual because it involves just the demolition alone of a building without an associated proposal, which is not ordinarily what this Commission sees. Ordinarily, the demolition would be part of a larger proposal for the redevelopment of the parcel. I will say that there's nothing inherently wrong with this application just for demolition, although it's not what you ordinarily see. There's, you know, it is still, there's nothing inherently wrong with a demolition application just for demolition. I just wanted to flag that for you all, and I would be happy to answer any questions anyone may have about any of that.
Anyone have any? Yes, John.
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering, is it the city's intent to keep the the fence going out into State Street if the building remains as it is now?
Well, consistent with the recommendation by Jeff Naraki, we would keep the barrier in place until such a time as the hazard is removed, whether that is by repair or demolition. We would keep it in place for public safety until that occurs.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Trevor? Margot?
Question.
Yes.
Could you remind us, please, the dates when the HDC approved the applicant's plan for redevelopment for this property?
The applicant's plan for redevelopment for this property. I apologize. I have all the other dates written down. That is actually the one that I do not have. I do have every other date on here written down. I don't have that one.
How can we proceed?
Offhand, I know. I apologize.
I will say, and Margot, you might have some of the dates because I know she was doing some research on it, but we have given several approvals for this project. And several, as the project progressed from being just the one building to then expanding to the neighboring Louis building, and then the year extensions and things like that. So we have given many approvals for this project along the years.
Yes, I'm sorry. I think I found it here. So February 5th of 2020 was the initial approval, and then we approved in January of 21 some changes, I think, with relation to the purchase of the Louis building. So the development plan, there has been a development plan, and it was approved, and I just want to be sure that everybody understands that.
Yep. It has since expired. Thanks. All right. Thank you, Trevor. I don't think anybody has any more questions. They may pop up, so don't go too far away.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
City council member.
Hi, Mr. Mulligan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of points following up on what Attorney McCourt had to say. With respect to the most recent litigation, my firm has not been involved in the litigation. We've just been involved representing the property owner in land use approvals here locally. However, my understanding is that though the case is dismissed, the court still retains jurisdiction over it, and it's subject to motions for rehearing. So it's still alive on the docket in Superior Court. In addition, since the fire, as you just discussed, there has been a fair amount of activity in terms of getting approvals and certificates of approval from this board, variances from the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and site plan review from the Planning Board. All of those approvals have lapsed. We are now in a situation where we have what remains of 278 State Street in a condition that it cannot be saved. We were instructed on June 20th by Shanti Wolf, the chief building inspector, to make the building safe and provide a report from a certified engineer as to what temporary measures we could take to do so. Fred Emanuel from Emanuel Engineering, who's here with us tonight and who can speak to you about this, issued a report which I submitted as part of this application. And his conclusion after reviewing the property is that it cannot be made safe on a temporary basis. There is no remedial effort that we can take that will accomplish what we were instructed to do by the chief building inspector. Jeff Naraki's report doesn't refute that. And Jeff Naraki's report indicates that the potential public safety impact makes the road closures appropriate. Your review criteria and the purposes and objectives of the Historic District Commission ordinance can only realistically be achieved with an entirely new development. And we're willing to do that. We look forward to doing that. What we will ultimately get out of this, and when I say we, I mean all of us here today and the entire community, will be a development that is fully vetted by this board, this commission, and that will, by definition, meet all of your appropriate review criteria. Hanging on to the idea that we can achieve all of that by integrating the existing husk of 278 State Street eliminates that possibility. It can't feasibly be done. It can't economically be done. And we need the relief that we're requesting in order to proceed with a project that achieves all of your review criteria and objectives. One thing I think you need to keep in mind is that should we proceed, and if we get the approval to take the remainder of the building down, later tonight we're going to go into a work session, and we've provided one scenario which proposes a building that evokes the existing structure at 278 State Street. The structure as it stands now and what we may propose as we go forward is non-compliant with zoning. We would need at least 2 variances for height and number of stories, and probably variances for glazing and modulation and some of the other intricacies of the character district. So there's multiple levels of approvals that have to be gone through to get this project developed, to get any project developed. And that's why, from a feasibility point of view, we can only proceed if we get the approval to demolish the building, what's left of the building that's there now. And if you would like to hear from Fred Emanuel about the condition of the building, I can bring him up, but I think you understand the situation there.
Yes, we do. We have been briefed on the condition, and we've all thought about the situation. I'm willing to move us forward in a way, but I do have one question that I wanted to ask, which is, what has changed in the amount of time since we originally had our one report from a preservation engineer that said, yes, this building is salvageable, to this point now where it is an imminent collapse?
Well, I mean, what has changed is the passage of time, obviously. We have a very compromised husk of a building that has been intermittently open to the weather. My client has been instructed by the city on 2 occasions to put temporary roofs on it, which temporary roofs are temporary, they fail. So there's been a significant amount of additional weather-related damage since the fire, I would imagine. I mean, that's just a layman's take on it, but I think that's a reasonable take on it. Also, since we spent a fair amount of time and effort and expense on obtaining approvals, construction costs have skyrocketed. So there's quite a bit that's different now than what the situation was in 2017 and moving forward.
Right. I'm just talking about the physicality of it, and really what I'm getting at is that it was left open to the weather for far too long, which has caused this situation. With the consent of the commission, I would like to move forward. As Trevor said, we normally grant a demolition when it's attached to the approval of a design that's going to take its place. So even though Trevor says it's totally fine and legal to just approve a demolition. I want to make sure that we are procedurally somewhat consistent with how we work. So I would like to go forward with the work session first.
Well, we will not go forward with the work session if we don't have a commitment that we can remove the building. The design that we've proposed is the basis of that design, and the basis for the work session is starting with a blank slate. If we are going to go down the path of preparing and reviewing designs, ultimately to get back to the point that the city is going to tell us through the various boards that we have to maintain the husk of the Times building, then we're not going to proceed.
Understood. I think that we might be at a stalemate then, because how we normally proceed is to
And again, Madam
have an understanding, excuse me,
Sure.
have an understanding and are comfortable with knowing that something appropriate is going to be put in its place.
And I understand that. And in a normal case, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think this is necessarily the normal case. Again, if we proceed along the direction that I think most of us would like, which is something that evokes what's there now, we're going to need approvals from 3 different boards and commissions. That is going to take months, if not longer. There's no guarantee that a design that this board approves, if it requires variances, will get the variances from the zoning board. My client is not willing to commit to going down that path unless he can get the building that's left removed. And if the building that's left is removed, then you all are dealing with a project that is a blank slate, and all of the criteria and purposes and intents of your ordinance can be met, and your job is to make sure they're met, and you will do that. I think we worked with this commission and with all the other boards in good faith over the years to meet and achieve your concerns over the years. There's no reason to think we're not going to do that, but Mr. Flores is not going to continue to proceed with design review without the understanding that it's a design from the ground up.
I think that I think it's understood by all of us that the design that has been presented, which we have reviewed for the work session, is very much in keeping to what was approved before, and we understand that it is sort of a redesign of the existing building in spirit with a new way. And yes, we wouldn't approve it if it didn't meet all of our findings of fact and our criteria. However, I am not comfortable with starting with a total blank slate until we just have a conversation. And maybe we have it so that the vote is even just flipped tonight, so that we vote on this, but after we have the conversation about the design that's there. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but we've reviewed it. We know what it is. Having that conversation, I think, would make us all feel a little bit better about moving forward with the demolition of the building if it can't be saved. Sure, John.
Sure.
Yes, please.
So, I was really leading the charge in 2017 for preserving this building. 7 years have gone by. So it's an alternative idea. This is like the Bates Motel in keeping your dead mother up in the bedroom and she's preserved there forever. This is, unfortunately, I think that we've hit this stalemate, and I hate to say this, But I feel that if the alternative, as we've heard from our attorney, is that we are looking at this thing with a fence going out into State Street ad infinitum forever with snow, et cetera, I'm not willing to accept that. I am more willing to accept the demolition of the building than the alternative that we have been put in right now. We weren't in this position before. It was deemed okay to just, have it closed off, the little front of it, et cetera. But the way it is now, and it's been told that this is how it's going to be, I can't accept it. And the fact that I would like to see them rebuild the Times building as they are presenting here, albeit the floors have been altered and stuff, that's good, because it goes into the program of the rest of the building. And I would like to see Mr. Keen's original design that we looked at quite a bit and approved any numbers of times. And some changes to it. We approved the left-hand portion of this building, and we also had work sessions and approved the front of Louis' restaurant. And I don't know what else to call that building. I would call it Gallagher's, but that would show my age. So all that has been approved, but we cannot, ask them to guarantee that they're going to do this. I mean, after the building is demolished, there could be a big sign, for sale sign, the Floros lot for sale. C'est la vie. The only thing I can say about that, and I know everybody's upset that I've said this, but is that we will have control over what any new construction would happen in this little lot. So, yes, we might be starting over again with a new design, but that's up to us to control.
Yes, Martin, and then I'll have Trevor come up and chat with us.
I'm unwilling to commit to a demo just based on a promise, given the history of things in the past. But we do stipulations all the time. Why couldn't we just simply get a demolition with the stipulation that we approve a coming design? This would give you the demolition, but it would be based on our approvals of what's coming forward.
Well, again, the problem, respectfully, is that the approvals of what comes forward can take months, if not longer. Again, we have to go through 3 boards to get something approved. State Street's going to be closed for all that time.
Understood.
The building is a hazard for all that time. The possibility remains that we don't get the project approved. So where does that leave us? That leaves us right where we are now. Again, I think
it's a path forward.
And I think that the more appropriate path forward, again, respectfully, is to allow us to, I mean, this building's time has come and gone. And once it's down, then you're in control of what goes up after it, no matter what happens. And
Well, all due respect, you're in control of what goes up as well.
Right.
Once it goes down.
But we have to meet your criteria. We can't, anything we build needs to be blessed by this commission, obviously. That's my point. Unless you're committed to leaving State Street barricaded, 2/3 of State Street barricaded at that intersection indefinitely while, this plays out, either in this form or somewhere else, then I think the solution, and it's a solution that I think everybody ought to be able to live with, is to allow us to take it down and come to you with a project that you can approve. And if you don't like the project we propose, we change it to one that you approve. That's what we've done.
If I could,
Yeah,
That's-
I see Trevor twitching over there, so would you please come up and...
Thank you. And I apologize in advance if I'm going to be overstepping a little bit here, but, and I know this is unusual, and I in part blame myself for speaking earlier, but you have procedures to work through here. You have a public hearing on this matter. I think you've asked the applicant if they, would agree to reorder their application, and they have not agreed to do so. My strong recommendation at this point is to allow them to proceed. Here, take your public hearing on this. The public has the right to be heard on this as well, and just proceed through the application according to your ordinary procedures at this time. That would be my strong recommendation at this point. Thank you.
All right. Rich, sorry, and then Larry.
Thank you. I appreciate all the efforts that's been done to save this building. I mean, both by the owner, this commission. It's a very historic building. My family has history in the newspaper business in Portsmouth, and this building is very historic when it comes to the newspaper. It's sad that we've gotten to the point where it is now. I don't think anyone's winning with the current state it is right now. No one can walk around the sidewalk. Half the street's blocked off. It's a hazard. It's actually a public safety hazard. My number one job up here as a city councilor is to keep residents and people of Portsmouth, visitors, everyone safe. Right now, I have every customer that comes into the old ferry landing asking me if the building's going to fall on them or not. And, it's not a safe situation we've created. Yes, we want to do everything we can to preserve all the history, all the buildings. But I think we need to have some faith with our applicants, work with them. We're all part of this community together. And to, stalemate and this and it's, but I think we need to move forward. I think we can have some faith in the applicant that we all want, they're willing to rebuild the building, the Times building. I think that is a win. We could have an applicant here that is, I want to put up brick row houses and eliminate that whole story. We're not dealing with that. So I thank the applicant for not, having that sort of application. But the fact that it's walled off and it's been we've been looking at it for 7 years. I was there on the day of the fire. No one wanted that fire to happen. But we have to recognize where we are and the cards, the cards we have in our hand. So I think to move forward, I think we need to have some faith in the applicant and allow them to demolish this and then continue to work with them for the greater benefit of the community.
Larry.
I'm going to more or less side with Commissioner Blaylock here on this. I was not here 7 years ago. It is a hazard right now, I believe, and it is certainly an eyesore. This design, which you've presented, to me that tells me you have some good faith coming here with that design because you've represented it. You're going to build a facsimile of the existing building as part of whatever else you develop. Okay. I'm not a practicing attorney, but I am a licensed attorney. There has to be a way to draft a demolition permit such that there's a mutual understanding between the HDC and you guys that whatever is constructed in that space will be some facsimile representation of what is there now. And perhaps if you've come forward in good faith, and we're certainly coming forward in good faith, and we sit down at this table and talk about this, perhaps between you as a licensed New Hampshire attorney and the city's licensed New Hampshire attorney, there's a way of coming up with a demolition permit which achieves all those goals, because the status quo is not acceptable. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Margot? Mr. Adams?
Yeah, I think I'm sitting on the fence in between both of these because, you have a little bit of the chicken and the egg, right? We the applicant is saying that they don't want to wait on the demolition permit because they're worried that we're not going to approve or we're not going to think of this. Look at their proposal with the idea that the Times building is going to be gone, and I think that's a little bit of a fallacy. I think we've demonstrated as an HDC that we are willing to accept a proposal that gives us a facsimile building. So I'm a little confused at the reluctance of the applicant, but I guess what I'm saying is that I don't see a risk to the applicant in allowing us to take a look at the plans for this space, in continuing their request to the next hearing date. It allows everybody to take a look at the whole situation, it's not, we're not saying no to the demolition. We're just saying, give us a chance to take a look at the plan. And we all understand, because it's been made perfectly clear by both attorneys, that the Times building is probably not gonna stay. And I think if we agree that that's the basis by which we're looking at the new plan, that the applicant should be willing to let us take a look at it.
Thanks, Margot. Mr. Adams, anything to add?
Madam Chairman, I just wonder where we're supposed to go with this. I want to believe that everyone here has great confidence in the applicant and what they intend to do, but I wasn't here for the time. But as I recall, they got an application, they provided an application, went through a work session process, and got a permit, and in 7 years, give or take, haven't done it. They chose themselves not to do it, even though they had a permit that was stamped or something facsimile of that. What they did do during that time, and I don't know this for an absolute fact, but I believe they appealed the decision of the commission to a number of different organizations because they didn't care for it. So your fair and honest broker is all I can see is someone that had a permit, didn't want to take it, did everything they could to try to get out from underneath that, and now they're telling you that they can't make another move, even have another conversation with you until you let them tear that building down and make sure that their whole problem, which they must have with this, is over. I don't see that as a way to start. I don't see my start. This would be my first time at this thing, and I just don't see that's a fair way to do it. I don't see where they've proven that they are a fair and honest broker, as each one of you has for years sat here and tried to exercise the best that you could provide for the people that came here. And I don't see it being reciprocated. Dave's opinion.
Yes, Dan.
I have to agree that it's really hard to give a demo without knowing what's going to replace it. And we talk about faith, but there's been 7 years of neglect on a building that's smack in the town in the way of windows we've asked you to do, in the way of roofs we asked you to do. And part of this shows, as well as trying to work around all kinds of ways with our decision before, a real lack of trust, at least in me, a real lack of trust. So I cannot approve demo without a better idea what's going to replace it.
All right. Well, yes.
We have to vote on
I did have one question that might help clarify just a small bit. I know that it was mentioned part of the earlier redevelopment process there were some issues with the transformer with Eversource. So I guess my question would be, has that at all been resolved? Do we know how that can be resolved moving forward? And the reason why I ask is because I would wonder what the redevelopment plan would look like or how it would be approved without having access to the necessary transformers.
Yeah,
from
so
Eversource.
thank you, Isaac. I can elaborate a little bit on that. The transformer was quite a saga in and of itself, and I think Nick Cracknell was quarterbacking the effort to get Eversource to agree to a transformer site off-site to power this development. Ultimately, and that took literally years. Ultimately, nothing came of it, and what we have determined we can do is put a transformer on the site, on the Church Street elevation, in a cutout, and then build stories over it. So it's not an ideal solution, but it is a solution. So it can be done.
Sure.
But that's where that stands.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm not quite sure how to move forward. I will take the advice from our city attorney to move forward with this vote, but I'm a little bit disappointed that we're not even allowed to have a conversation about the proposed design before. I think we're all willing to have that exchange, but you understand that as a chair, I'm also making sure that our commission functions in a way that is consistent and with how we normally proceed. And so I'm concerned, I just want to make sure that this doesn't set some sort of precedent for the future where this sort of thing comes back and happens again. Because this is a very, like we said, special and unique situation that we're in. And I don't want it to be repeated or used as an example ever.
Madam Chair, I think that's a reasonable concern that you have. I would just point out that, land use boards' decisions, even though they're sometimes quasi-judicial in nature, don't have precedential value. And, while you would ideally want to act consistently before, with all applications that come before you, each application stands and falls on its own. So there would be no binding precedent that
we know
hold
this.
You. Yes, I know.
To tell all of the other applicants and the public that's how it works.
You're going to come back every Wednesday night?
All right. Well,
Are we open to the public?
Did you open it up to the public or not?
Yes. I'll continue on this public hearing, and if there's no other questions from our commission, we'll open it up to the public to comment on the demolition request. So if you want to comment, please come up to the podium and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Robin Schnell. I live on Spring Street, 109 Spring Street, but I am, more to the point, a parishioner at South Church. It's not a very big space between South Church and that building. And every Sunday when I go, I can see where bricks have fallen off of the building. One Sunday, there was a piece of plywood that had sailed out of the window and landed in our front yard. In the summertime, there are people out in our yard. Children running all around the building. When brick buildings fall, they don't just implode. Bricks fly everywhere. And we have all those old glass windows along the side. I'm afraid that it's going to, it's going to collapse. They don't give you warning. They just go. And the walls buckle out and the bricks fly. Please keep that in mind. Don't let it go till there's a snow load. Don't let it go till it freezes. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Verity Boyer, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Portsmouth Historical Society and its preservation advocacy arm, the Portsmouth Advocates. I serve as the program and volunteer engagement assistant at the Historical Society, and I have a background in historic preservation. So the advocates have reviewed the proposed plans submitted this evening and remain opposed to the proposed demolition of 278 State Street at this time, and therefore will not provide comment on the concepts for redevelopment in this context. As you know, the building was constructed in 1850, and it is a contributing structure within Portsmouth's Historic District and Portsmouth's Downtown National Register Historic District. The advocates feel that the complete demolition of this building would be premature and a tremendous loss to our downtown. The advocates feel strongly that 278 State Street still contributes to Portsmouth historic fabric despite its deteriorating condition. The exterior envelope has not been secure for many years, and it is unfortunate that a proposal for demolition has come before the HDC tonight after 7 years and the previously approved plans for rehabilitation. Before proceeding to condemn the structure with a 3-page letter report, we formally request that the Historic District Commission seek the expert opinion of a structural engineer with an expertise in historic masonry buildings. The Portsmouth Advocates encourage the applicant to pursue rehabilitation, more earnestly and with serious consideration. We ask that the Historic District Commission ensure that due diligence is complete before approving the removal of this historic structure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Douglas Green. I'm the chair of the Planning and Implementation Committee for South Church, 292 State Street. And first, I'm new to this procedure and impressed and proud of all of you, and I'm grateful to you. And I really mean that. And I'm not just trying to stroke you. A little naive about the process. I am mostly concerned, or I came here mostly armed with questions about if the building is demolished, what is the process? What, we need to know about managing dust and other pollutants that might fly around, noise, timelines, working hours, communication plans, who do we talk to, how are we going to be notified, et cetera. I don't know that this is the forum for that. I suspect it's not. So my question now is, how do I stay in the loop on this whole process? How do we stay in the loop on this whole process? And, can you notify, can I get emails about this whole process and so forth? Is that?
Sure. I can respond to that. So moving forward, anytime, that this project goes before any land use board, whether it's a work session or a public hearing for the HDC, and then subsequently before a public hearing to the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Board for various review and approvals, we always notice with abutter notices. So any direct abutter and then any indirect abutter within 300 feet is notified via mail. As I mentioned, any property that is directly abutting will receive a notice, and that will let you know kind of when the meeting date is, what the proposal is, and so forth.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
And as I mentioned, that would be before any land use board. So it's been mentioned that any redevelopment on this property will most likely take several boards and commissions to get through. So there will be several opportunities for notices of that in the future.
Okay. We're a large nonprofit organization. There are many ways of information getting into our institution, and many ways for them to get lost. How do I get myself directly in the loop with my email and my phone number?
Sure. Unfortunately, we don't have an email system or a phone call system for abutter notices. If that's something that, is of high importance, and if you might miss out on communication, the next best thing would be, every time we have a meeting, whether it's in a work session phase or in a public hearing such as this, we always either have a continuation to the next meeting that will come to, or we have a decision. So the best way to follow along in that case would be from tonight's meeting, whether we continue this or we have a final vote, you'll know when the next meeting this will be able to come up on.
You'll announce that tonight?
That's correct, exactly. So should it be continued, we will announce the next meeting date that will be at.
Excellent.
That way you would have the ability to then keep following along with us.
Thank
Okay?
you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So then, those are all the questions I came armed with. Tonight I heard the word variance, and I heard the word story. This is now my personal comment. I'm not real fond of Port Walk and the fact that there's very little daylight over there. And if we're talking about making this building a lot taller, that is something that I hope this commission and zoning and so forth is going to push back on. Secondly, I've heard some interesting comments. I was glad to hear from Mr. Adams' comment about performance up to now by this group in terms of litigation and so forth. It doesn't demonstrate goodwill. Commissioner Booz suggested, how about we draft a letter? So bird in the hand, a commitment. I mean, I don't even know if that would be legally binding. So from what I witnessed tonight, I am skeptical about this good faith idea. And I don't know if letting this team demolish the building diminishes the Historic Commission's leverage. That seems to be what's on the table, is that once you let the thing go down, then whatever leverage you have to have influence over this project evaporates. Is that true?
No.
No.
Do you lose any leverage
No.
if you do that? So that's not really an issue here.
No, it's true what Mr. Mulligan said, that we still have full approval of whatever is going to be built in that place.
Yeah.
So,
I don't, okay. I think that covers it for me. Thank you for your time.
thank you. All right, anyone else from the public? Anyone on the line?
I don't have anyone online.
I ask a question of the city attorney.
Yes, please.
I'd like to ask a question. I'd just like to get the words on the table. Should this collapse tonight, who is liable for any kind of potential damage or life safety? Who's liable, and would that change based on our ruling tonight?
I'll answer your second question first. Your ruling tonight has no bearing on liability, in my opinion. Certainly, when you're talking about an issue of liability, it is my belief that the city has taken every appropriate step to ensure the public safety. That goes to putting up the barricade, et cetera. We've also acquired an expert report. It is my belief the city has taken every appropriate step to protect the public safety.
And I'll give that courtesy to the attorney for the applicant if they'd like to answer that as well.
Thank you. I guess to restate your question, if something catastrophic happened, in the near term, who would be responsible? I think there would be a lot of litigation over that for the next several years. I'm not the attorney that's been handling the litigation over this. I've just been doing the land use, but
You know, and please don't take this as a threat because you asked the question, but I can easily foresee a position that could be taken that there is a known dangerous condition that the city is preventing us from taking appropriate steps to remedy. And again, I'm not, please don't take that as a threat because that's not my intention here. But, you know, I've been a lawyer for 30 years and, you know, if something happened out there, I don't think it's just going to be up to the property owner to be responsible for it. That will not be the last word.
Thank you.
Maybe the ultimate word, but it'll take something to get there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have a question for Trevor again. Can we get, if we were to vote on this and approve a demolition, could there be a stipulation attached to it?
Certainly.
So that the demolition is granted, but what has to replace it is a general replica of the building, which could be adjusted or refined in future work sessions or approvals. But something that says that will go past even if, you know, say they demolish it and then there's a for sale sign and some new owner comes in and takes the empty lot.
Certainly that kind of condition, if the applicant would agree to it, would be certainly appropriate. It doesn't sound to me as though the applicant is going to agree to that. And so when you're requiring someone to take steps above and beyond what is permitted by right under the zoning ordinance, it would strike me as contradictory.
Well, it seems that what they're presenting here, their intention is to create a likeness of the building. So again, to alleviate the fears that we have, even though we have review and control over what goes there, but we also can't in our public hearings or even our work sessions say we want a particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
We react to what is proposed to us. So this is the one path I'm asking, that we can say we want this particular thing.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think, you know, you have to work through your review criteria, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is, you know, preserving history. And, you know, I mean, I think that's where this would fall under if you were to pursue it.
Exactly.
Certainly. You know, perhaps something that may be more amenable, and, you know, we're kind of negotiating here in a very public format
Mm-hmm.
without the opportunity to go back and forth, so I apologize, but perhaps something that would be more amenable would be, you know, an agreed upon stipulation that the applicant would pursue a variance that would permit a construction of a reasonable facade, so that if say the Board of Adjustment denies said variance, they're not then caught between a rock and a hard place.
Sure.
For example. And again, I don't know if you would be amenable to something like that, but it's just something that came to mind.
Thank you, Trevor. That was actually the point I was going to make, that, you know, the stipulation that you're suggesting isn't binding on the other board.
Right.
So, you know, if there's a creative workaround, I'm all ears, but, you know, what I don't want to be in the position of is being committed to a building that requires relief that we may never get. And, you know, I don't necessarily think it's not, you can never be sure you're going to get variances. And, you know, we've had this situation in Portsmouth just, I think, last year or the year before on Congress Street, when what appeared to me to be a very minor variance for a historic building, after it had been approved by this commission, was denied by the zoning board. You know, that is the concern we have by being, you know, by tying the demolition into a specific type of development. You've seen what we intend to proceed with, but, you know, anything we proceed with needs your blessing and approval. And if it's going to go to the number of stories and the height that the 278, remains of 278 is now, it's going to require variances as well.
If I can interject
Sure.
something. First of all, that would be a replacement in kind, I think, but perhaps, I mean, Rich serving both on the council and on this board, maybe there's a way to work together to get the agreement from the other boards, whether it's zoning or whatever, in some kind of a preliminary.
It's not.
No.
Firearms.
Yeah, well, it was an idea, you know.
Reagan,
yes.
may I
Madam Chairman?
interject for a moment?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Margot,
So-
please.
So I think the point about us having review over what comes next is sort of a double-edged sword, because the applicant is concerned that if they make any kind of representation that they're going to make a replica of the Times building and then they can't get their other variances, that, therefore, then they have a problem. And we have the reverse situation where we're concerned that somebody, that we approve the demolition and demolition happens and then the lot gets sold, and then a person comes forward and says, I want to create this development, and our design review process would make us have to review on an honest basis whatever they gave us, whether it included a Times building or not. And I think that's a reasonable concern for this commission, given how important and how contributing that the Times building was. And that's why I think it's really important that we not approve the demolition at this meeting and that we talk about the development plan. Because if one of the concerns is the facsimile of the Times building as it exists today causes all sorts of variances, well, tell me what you need to create this building that doesn't require a variance. I would be happy to have the Times building remade shorter, if that's what you need to not worry about variances, because it's not going to be the Times building anymore. We know that. What we're trying to do is trying to give, a bow to that history and make sure that people understand there was a time when newspapers were printed and written right here in town. It doesn't have to be the 70 feet or whatever the feet is today. It doesn't have to be that in order to achieve what we're trying to achieve. And that's why I think it's important that we talk about the plan and that the applicant discuss with us their concerns, see if we can alleviate some of those challenges that they're concerned about. And that might make the whole thing, instead of having 12 challenges, now we're down to 2. But we can't do that if the applicant isn't willing to give us 1 month and this meeting to talk about that without, saying, well, I won't talk to you unless you approve the demolition.
Thank you, Margot.
That's my
thoughts exactly. David, did you want to have anything to say before him?
So much of this depends on the willingness of the applicant to move forward in a joint session with us, arm in arm, or however one might see that. If they choose not to do what the commission thinks is appropriate, just sit on it again. And drive people that are concerned, as some of our members, about an empty space being there and what the empty space means. I for one, and I don't understand where we're going with this, because I would be very concerned if I had a partially damaged building looming over the community and just decide to walk away from that at any given moment. I don't see how I could do that. Clearly, I'm not in this position. Maybe there's a reason. But be careful that no matter what you think is going to happen, I don't think it's really going to happen that way. I don't think you can predict.
I mean, we have an unsafe building. I don't think anyone appears trying to save the structure, or, I mean, we're just going to continue to look at that and not use our sidewalks and have, children playing in the front of the church with bricks flying at them. I don't see any win not granting the demolition. We will always have say in what gets put there next, but I don't see anyone winning walking out of here, this building tonight, being like, oh, we made them keep the building there the way it is, unsafe as a hazard with traffic blocked off and no sidewalk, and it's starting to affect a lot of other portions of town.
Understood, and I don't think you hear anybody here saying that
Yeah, I
they
just want to remind
keep
everybody.
that
No,
situation.
yeah. So I just want to remind our goals. You know what I mean? If we're gonna, try to get something else and prevent this, it's like trying to get your cake and eat it too. Let's just worry about the cake first, and let's take the first step forward instead of trying to, make it so we're, you're starting at the end and trying to work backwards. Yeah.
Yes.
Madam Chairman?
That simple,
Life is work.
but yes.
I'd like to remind the commission that all we're really asking for, or all we're really trying to do is to have a cogent conversation about the replacement of the building before we vote for it to come down. Before. It's been 7 years in this condition. We're talking about one meeting. And somehow that's not available to us. And I don't understand. And I'm not trying to make any school child or parishioner of the church hurt or damaged in the
Agreed.
process.
And-
I'm just asking to try to do what I think of as my job for the community.
Agreed, and I will ask one more time, for even tonight, could we switch the rules, have the conversation first, and then go to a vote? Just so that we can ask some of these questions, like what Margot said, how tall does the building need to be reduced to avoid variances? Can we work with you a little bit?
Madam Chair, just in the spirit of, comedy, I will concede that we can talk about that if you
That
want
would be great. Thank you. I think that will allow us to move
But
forward.
but understand that we want a decision on the demolition this evening. If the result of going into the work session is going to be that you want a continuance to next month, then we're not going to agree to that.
I think we just all need to understand
Okay.
what the next step is.
Understood.
So if I could have I don't know if I need a motion to suspend the rules and to move this around, but if I could have a motion to, I guess, just rearrange the work session so that, the work session so that it comes before the public hearing for this.
Might be better to
We are in the middle of
close
the public hearing right now, so.
Yeah, a motion to close the public hearing, open
Table?
the work session with the opportunity that we will reopen the public hearing
Later on tonight.
at another time.
After the work session tonight.
Just like the good old.
That's clear. Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Sorry, Trevor, did you? We don't have a second yet, so you,
I was just trying to help move, my recommendation would be that you move to suspend the rules to bring forward the work session at this time. And then when you conclude the work session, you'll be exactly where you are
Great.
right this minute.
great, thank you. So, motion to suspend the rules,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All right. Roll call. Dr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Approved.
Mr. Wykoff?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Adams? Ms. Doring?
Yes.
And chair votes aye. Okay, let's all go down to the table to have a discussion.
You have this stuff to go up on the screen, Isaac?
Anything else after these?
Prefer to do this on the big screen so everybody can see, or?
Yeah, it'll still be on the big screen, but this makes it a little cozier so we can have, Hello again.
Hello.
Introduce yourself.
For the record, I'm Michael Keene. I'm the architect for the previous approvals and try to move this thing forward if we
You're
can.
the one we've been wanting to talk to, and unfortunately, we get an attorney.
Oh, be careful.
Oh, I don't care.
So you've seen the quick sketch that we did in response for tonight, assuming, this assumed that the Times Building came down. And we were proposing some sort of a facsimile in terms of size, scale. We were trying to keep the fenestration, the window proportions and everything the same. So that's what kind of drove us now into the need for a variance. I did look at originally, let me backtrack for a second. The original proposal of the Times Building as is with the floor lines of the existing Times Building. When we got to the additions, both on Pleasant Street and Church Street, we dropped the floor lines down in order to try to keep the mass down a little bit, but also to tie into the floor lines in Louis. Like the previous application, we have building code issues where we're trying to get access to egress and things like that. We've also got a problem now with floors at differential heights in terms of being able to provide accessible entrances to each unit, which we're required to do. So that was requiring us, number one, to put the elevator in a certain location, to have an elevator that had doors on both sides that got to two different levels, and a bunch of other things. So when the proposal came back to what happens when if the Times Building were to come down, we had a choice of to either try to match those floor lines with the proposed new, which made the Times Building much smaller, changed the window fenestration, the window proportions. It really wasn't much of a faithful representation of what's there now. So what we did was we went the opposite way. We kept the Times Building as much as we could in this proportion, window sizes. We kept the floor lines approximately where they are in the Times Building now. And what we did in order to achieve some economies in terms of the floor levels is for the additions, we brought those floor levels up to match the Times Building. The net result of that is that the additions overall grow 6 feet from where they were previously.
And by additions, you mean just the new construction buildings?
Right, and that's both the Church Street, the back of 84 Pleasant Street on Church Street, and the two corner buildings at Pleasant Street and State Street. Otherwise, we left the proposal as it was in the detailing of all those buildings. The third thing that we're trying to do, and this is, I know it appears as though we've been dragging our feet in bad faith, but really, the tail that was wagging the dog is where this transformer goes. And I've got a 6-page log of our communications with Eversource starting on January 12th of 2021, 6 days after this board approved it. Between Nick, myself, Eversource, this was finally resolved in October of last year. And the resolution, we're still questioning whether or not this board is going to like it. There was some question, Eversource is saying, well, we were getting feedback from the city that they want to build to the 0 lot line. So this business of carving out a section of the building in order to land the transformer down there was still a big question mark for us. So the 3 things that we want to talk about right now are if the Times Building is demolished, and I think you've already answered one question, is that we want some reasonable representation of what was there. And I was questioning whether or not the board even wanted that. If it wasn't going to be a historic replication, then maybe we'd want to start with a blank slate. But it sounds like the feeling of the board is to try to get something that replicates the Times Building. So then the next question is being able to match the floor lines in the scale of the additions. And then the third thing is the carve out of the building, which is in the very back corner of the Church Street addition that's here. And what we tried to do was we gave them the overhead clearance that they need to be able to change out the transformer if it needs to be changed out. But then on the 3rd floor, we brought that building line back out to try to create the mass. We'd put some sort of fence or screening or something to try to maintain the street front coming down along Church Street if we can. So what happens is that we pick up 3 feet in height, basically at the 1st floor, the storefront of the State Street, Pleasant Street addition. We add 3 feet of storefront. I think that actually gets us out of one of the variances we needed. Believe it or not, our storefront design here didn't meet the criteria for the percentage of glazing.
Really?
Yeah, oddly enough. So now, and I'm not even sure going up is because I think we're limited to only the first 10 feet of that glazing. But we've tried to add more glazing and raise the storefront and entablature there. And then each of the other floors picks up 1'2" in height. So again, the overall.
Sequentially?
Sequentially, right. 1'2", 2'4", on top of 3'8". So we end up with 6 feet extra in height of the building. The Times Building alone doesn't meet your current zoning ordinance for either height or story count. So in order to get that to be compliant with the current zoning, we'd need to take a floor off or put it under a mansard and create a short story, or set it back, which I don't think we've got the footprint to be able to set it back far enough to meet that criteria, or lower the ceiling height, I think, to 6 or 7 feet or something like that. So we need to take a story off, and we need to get it down from what's currently 54 feet, 55 feet. We need to get it down to 45 feet in order to avoid a height variance just for the Times Building. Our previous proposal had a variance for, well, the Times Building, of course, was pre-existing, so that was permitted. We had a variance for height in feet for the penthouse that was on top of the Pleasant Street, State Street addition. And there was a quirk on the Church Street addition that we tried to avoid putting a mansard in there. If we put a mansard in the Church Street addition, we became code compliant because we had 3 stories and a short story. I think we were all getting a little bit tired of the mansards here, so we talked about having a setback floor here. The HDC agreed with that. We were able to present that to the BOA, saying, you know, this was the preferred design, both by this commission and the applicant, and we were able to get a variance for that, or technically didn't meet the short story. So we would still need those variances. 100% lot coverage was another variance that we needed, which is, I think, is the goal, is to build 0 lot line downtown. So that put us into that. And those are the only ones that come quickly to mind. Oh, and the fenestration. Yeah, those are the ones that come quickly to mind. And we would probably need all of those again with this proposal.
It would be nice to have another board under pressure. Not just us.
Well, I'm going to agree with John here on this. If you build this as represented, and it looks like a very close facsimile to me, whatever board doesn't grant you that variance, I think their feet would probably be in the fire on that, because this is if you can't save what's there, and you build something that looks exactly like it, that benefits the whole city. That benefits the citizens that, you know, Rich was talking about, that benefits the visitors that come and no longer see an empty lot that looks like a fire pit. You know, I could not imagine a board not going along with you. But then again, I'm the new guy here, so I don't know.
And, you know, just not to belabor the point, but the criteria for granting a variance is very different than the criteria for getting a certificate of approval.
Right.
So, you know, it's not exactly apples to apples.
Yeah.
And in terms of the permitting process and the constructability, is the fact of the matter is we didn't have all our permits yet because we didn't have site plan approval by the planning board, because we couldn't get a notice commitment to serve by Eversource. So we couldn't go to the planning board without knowing what was happening with that transformer. And unfortunately, by the time it was resolved, all of our approvals had run out.
Everything you just described, is it reflected in this
Yes.
set of drawings?
Yes.
Weren't you going to try to reduce the 0 lot line situation with maybe a carve-out for the transformer?
It's on the backside of Church Street elevation on the far
It's
right
under
of the
that
plan.
awning.
Green box.
Okay, okay.
That doesn't cover the lot coverage, though, because the building is built over the, it has to be open to the sky in order to be considered open space. And it's
Right. Okay, understood.
And what's labeled the Floros building would be connected with Jimmy's, or that would be, because there used to be space there, right? But
Yes,
that
no,
would
we
be flush.
now connect.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Where's the elevator?
Right now, it's shown that there's actually a chimney in that location now on the Times Building. So it's
Okay.
this brick section right
So it's
here.
that build out, okay.
We may have the opportunity to move that once these floors all line up to be a little bit more efficient, so it may come a little bit closer to State Street. But it'll probably still be basically in that line, that common line between the Times Building lot and the 278 lot and the 276 lot.
Okay. Quick question. The granite elements, the lintels, the sills, they're all new? They're all granite?
I am showing the granite. I was wrestling with that today as to whether or not we could try to salvage the existing granite that's there, but I'm not sure. I'd have to talk to the demolition people to see how that complicates the demolition.
Yeah.
And the corbelling would be?
Go a long way, though.
It would.
Yeah,
It would.
especially that big piece.
The corbelling at the top it's difficult in a thin masonry veneer, so we probably wouldn't be able to replicate that.
And some of it's destroyed.
Right, I meant replicate it with new, I don't think we'd be able to match that profile.
Yeah.
Has there been any discussion with a demolition contractor how this building would come down?
Not that I've been involved with, but I'm sure there has been. I know there was extensive talk with shoring companies and things like that with how it could be shored in the construction phase.
Yeah.
And no great solution was come up with, that's for sure. I know that.
Just speaking of the Times Building, because that's really the challenge, I think, of this. Everybody's pretty on board with everything else is gone, and you're making something like it. But if you're going to you're going to build this, but this will be a brick veneer on a
Steel frame. Probably.
with some sort of sheathing material on it, and then this
Yeah,
brick veneer clipped to it.
Modern
How could you possibly reuse a granite window header in that structure?
You're right, because those are probably,
Well, they got to
they're
pick up 3.
12-inch
Well,
wide for the brick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long 12, too.
Yeah.
So,
So you're right, it would have to be new granite.
or
at a
send
4
those off
inches.
to have them sliced. You won't do that.
Probably not.
Yeah. So, no. Just,
No.
let's deal with reality.
You mentioned that the Times Building couldn't be built under the variances you would need to build this replication. Is it the elevator shaft, the third floor? Just explain the different elements that would need variances for.
The elevator shaft's exempt.
Okay.
So the zoning ordinance says we can have 3 stories plus a short story, and there's 3 or 4 definitions of a short story. So by the virtue of the fact that there's 4 stories, we're already in a variance for stories. It also says that we're limited to 45 feet in height. So we have to meet both of those criteria. We have to be 3 plus a short story, and we have to be less than 45 feet in height. So we definitely we would lose a floor to get down to 45 feet height.
In this silly thing, but just for my head, if you don't mind, if you were to slip a steel frame and clip the 2 walls of the Times Building to that steel frame, could you make that meet code?
My understanding is no.
So the whole premise is shot.
You mean leave the existing brick there?
Well, that's one way it's been done in other places, towns that have ordinances and things, make them save facades. It's not like we're making this up. But it sounds like what you're saying is it wouldn't meet. You couldn't get that to meet code. We end up in the fire station scenario once again, where it's just our code compliance issues in this town supersede all other issues.
And I'm going to agree with you on that because, if you look at the Bank of America building, we got a rotunda on top of it. If you look at Hearth, isn't Hearth 4 floors? Or am I counting wrong? So this is asking for a variance to do a historical representation. I mean,
I don't think, we've not managed to have that happen.
yeah.
Yeah,
We
okay.
can't make promises.
Any other, Margot, any comments on the proposed plan?
I think it is very similar to what we approved before. The adjusting of the building on the corner to line up the stories makes complete sense to me. I think it does make the mass on the corner a little bit bigger, but I think it's a big corner and it can handle it. I'm not hearing the architect, Michael, say that there's a way that he can design this building that removes all of the variances. So I'm not sure that going from 4 to 3 or 4 to 2 is going to make a big difference on the applicant's confidence that it will get the variances that are necessary. So I guess where I'm going with this is, if you're going to ask for variances, whether it's 2 or 4, I think you should ask for variances on the best plan that you can come up with. And for me, it's the one that is the most faithful to the existing structure that we're losing.
Yeah.
That's what I...
Thank you. All right. Well, I'll just say that I am very similar to Margot. This looks, I mean, we've approved essentially this in spirit last time.
After long,
After many
long
different-
collaboration.
long
yes.
collaborations, many iterations, but I'm still very comfortable with this design. I think it's very appropriate. I personally don't like to see replicas of buildings, as you know. However, in the case where you're replicating something that is there and you know what it is, it's not like you're creating a fantasy old building that might have been there. This is what is there, it was there, and you're, because it's not feasible to keep the existing building, you're replacing it with a likeness to continue that history. And I do think that, in this case, if this replica is built, you have something on the cornerstone that says 2025 or whenever it's built, and say, in place of whatever. It's just so that it's clear. I could see this going forward. I think we haven't heard any negative comments from any of us. I think that we're all very comfortable with this plan and design. I hope that makes you feel better. We would love to, I'm speaking just from what I'm hearing, it seems like everybody wants to see this design go forward. Understanding that there are variances that need to be had. But again, just like Margot said, go for the best design that you have and get the variances you need for the best, which I think is the, generally a replica of the Times building.
Pressure from the other board. I mean, we could kind of make a commitment right here amongst ourselves, a gentleman's commitment, so to speak, that we would maybe go to the public hearing of the Board of Adjustment and say, we've approved this and we think it's appropriate.
Signed in blood or?
In blood.
We will all be there.
No, we're going to have to do it
We'll be
tonight.
there.
Well, we can't
Have
be,
you got your
not
knife?
too many of us can be there, because then we'll be a quorum. But yes,
Okay.
we can certainly,
We will represent.
Seems to me that 4 people went to a city council meeting.
we're acting as individuals.
Oh,
right, not
okay, yeah,
as-
all right. So that's-
So no, that's
If I remember the process from the last time, is we sort of went through a work session and got comfortable with the design, and then we went to the BOA. And I think that would be the case in this, as it should be said in
Yeah.
agreement. So
That's correct. We can get through the work session process here. Ultimately, we'll need the Board of Adjustment variances in order for the HDC to do a final public hearing and certificate. So you're correct on that.
And we have gotten a commitment from Eversource that this transformer works.
Yeah.
And I have it in writing. Unfortunately, the engineer that gave it to me is now retiring, so we'll have to see. We'll hope that the next one in line agrees with it. But they said that all along that this is what they thought the solution was going to have to be, so.
I'm glad that you finally found one.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I would agree with Reagan that I'm comfortable, with this design also.
So is there anyone from the public who wants to talk to the work session of the design? Anybody online?
I'm not seeing anyone on.
Okay. Then I will, I think we want to continue the work session so that we continue the conversation. So if I could get a motion to continue this work session.
Second. Are we far enough along that we go to the BOA first, or do you want to?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, we understand that this needs to be an expedited process, and we
Thank you.
all want this to go,
So I didn't know if you wanted to continue a date certain or continue.
The commission is comfortable with what was there and what the parts that you're proposing right now.
yeah, I mean, I yes. No, you haven't heard any of us say we want this changed or this, so.
No.
Yeah.
And if you do go to the Board of Adjustment to get the variances for height, stories, et cetera, if you need to, as we've seen before, if you need to make a little adjustment here or there, as long as that doesn't interfere with the variance itself, which I don't think in most cases it would, it'd be a design change or something like that, we can always handle that, after the fact. So it's really just more that you get the actual height for the story and, that sort of the lot line. That's the biggest part, so.
It's pretty disgusting that we have to get a variance to duplicate the height of a building that was
Right,
built
that's a said replacement in kind.
175 years ago.
Things change.
Things change.
All right, well, I need to
It's
take
worse.
a quick vote because we had the
Absolutely.
motion on the table. So, Dr.
Yes.
Approved.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Rich?
Aye.
Margot?
Yes.
All right, so votes aye. All right, so.
Not voting, but aye.
Yes. Mary doesn't get to vote because he's an alternate. All right, we can go up and then continue our public hearing
That back up again.
for the demolition.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All righty.
I do that.
All right, do I need to reopen anything, or are we just back to?
We're back where we were, right? Because we closed that and.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're back into our public hearing on the demolition. We've heard from the public. Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Well, hold on, I gotta close the public hearing.
Okay.
All right, so we've heard from the public. Are there any more questions? All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing, and now, what?
Yeah.
Now what?
We had a hand
Oh,
right
sorry.
as the gavel was.
Okay. Fine.
Just one question.
One quick question.
Again, Douglas
Reopening
Green,
the
the
public
South
hearing.
Church. Have we asked the owner if his intention is to actually do this work or to sell the property?
We don't.
We can't. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, we can't really.
Cannot. I mean, it seems to me this whole conversation is based on
It's not-
the premise that they will.
Yes. And and we continue to act in that good faith with.
Has
With the owner.
has the petitioner represented in any way that this is actually going to happen?
Well, he certainly spent a whole lot of money to come up with
To
these
develop the
designs.
design,
and
understood.
and to go. So I would like to think that, yes.
Okay.
And we're going to, in good faith, move forward with this understanding, so.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, now the public hearing is closed, and we'll have a motion.
I'll make a motion to allow the full demolition of the Times Building as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll say conservation and enhancement of property values, and it's I guess I'll say relation to historic and architectural value of existing structures.
All right. Are there any discussions?
Clarification?
Yes, please.
This is for the demolition,
Mhm.
based on our work session here.
Yes. Yes, this is, and hopefully you'll accept this clarification, that this demolition is based on, we're not adding any binding thing, but in good faith, that we're going to move forward with the design that has been presented and discussed in the work session, because it seems to have full backing and full support from this commission. So this is what we're basing our decision on for demolition. Is that?
I want more commitment than what we just had, so I won't be voting to approve. I think if they go to other boards and there's more discussion, I could see this thing just going up for sale with a demolition permit, and so for that reason, I'm not going to vote to approve.
Reagan?
Yes, Margo.
I would like to see if we could have some stipulations with regard to, during the demolition, see if there's some way to salvage some of the key points, some of the key granite, some elements that might be able to be worked into, if not the building itself, but like you said, a plaque, an explanation about the fire, something that, normally we would ask for photos and things that could be put into the historical record. Obviously, we don't really have that at this point. Like Martin, I'm a little bit uncertain about how I'm going to vote right now, because we are taking a big leap of faith, and there's not been the best of actions on the side of the applicant that I can see, as Martin says, that once it's demoed, it can be torn down, and a new applicant could come in with something that doesn't have the Times building in it at all, and if we have to go by our design review, we would have to approve something that didn't look like the Times building if it met all of our other criteria. And that's a big concern for me.
Understood. Yeah, yes.
I was just going to say, I made the motion, and I purposely chose the conservation and enhancement of property values. I actually was, my friends ran Louis' restaurant when they were there, and they weren't wealthy, they weren't old, they're pretty young entrepreneurs, and it was pretty devastating to their lives, their families, that they couldn't operate their business even though it was in the building next door. So, this is, when I say this is affecting a lot of people, the traffic, the sidewalk, the church next door, I really think that we need to move forward, and I look forward to working with the applicant on the plans.
I'm going to add this to, and again, I'm agreeing with Rich on this, but
I'm sorry, Larry, but when we're in a public
that's right, I'm not voting, sorry, go ahead.
Well, there was the question of potential salvage, and hopefully there can be we talked about it, maybe not the reuse, but maybe the big granite steps or something can be salvaged and reused, but I'd hope that the applicant will have at least a little bit of that effort, if there's anything that can be salvaged and reused, to be done. I'm going to support this simply in good faith, hoping and wanting this to move forward, and knowing that the applicant wants to move quickly now. So hopefully we can get this done and moving and get all of your other approvals very quickly, so that we can see this lot that has been a really sad hole in the center of our downtown be filled in and improved. So there are no other comments. I'll do a roll call vote. Dr. Brown?
Were there stipulations or not? It's just a pure. Go for it.
No, there was
That's all we can do.
a request for salvage if possible, but there's not a stipulation.
No.
No.
Margot?
Like being at a restaurant and ask everybody else to choose their menu first. I'm going to vote very reluctantly yes, taking a big risk that this is going to turn out right.
Okay, John?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
David?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So you have your demolition permit. Again, it's granted with the understanding that this is the design that will move forward, and also with the understanding that this is a rare situation that we're in. So it's been difficult, but thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you for agreeing to have the work session first. I think that was very valuable to have that discussion, and we appreciate it. So thank you, Mr. Keene, for continuing to work on this. All right.
Is that it?
And so, nothing left. Let's have a
Good.
Let's have a
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Any second?
Second.
All right. Aye.
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 Thank you.